Hey there. Tonight, we're slipping into the oldest stories the Greeks ever told. The ones whispered long before Olympus had its throne, before gods ruled the skies, and before thunder even had a name. This is a tale of the Titans. Colossal, ancient beings who governed the cosmos long, before Zeus ever hurled his first lightning bolt. It's a story woven with power, prophecy, rebellion, the long, quiet shadows cast by giants the world has nearly forgotten. If this kind of storytelling helps you wind down, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if it truly brings you peace. And if you like, leave a note in the comments about where you're listening from and what time it is. There's something oddly comforting about drifting off to sleep with whispers of ancient chaos rumbling softly in the background. So take a deep breath, let the stars fade into distance, and let's begin with the entire story of the Titans. Before the thunder of Zeus, before the tangled affairs of mortals and gods, before temples rose or sacred fires burned on polished altars, there was only chaos. Not the kind you find in a teenager's bedroom or the British Parliament on a particularly chaotic day, but primordial chaos. According to the ancient Greeks, this was the very first thing to exist, a vast, formless expanse, or more accurately, the complete absence of form. It wasn't a dramatic storm of swirling energy, but an empty, silent chasm, a cosmic shrug. You couldn't really point to it and say, there's the beginning of everything. And yet, that's exactly what it was. The Greeks didn't deal in tidy origin stories. Their myths were like their wine, strong, dark, and capable of making you question the nature of reality. And so, out of this chaos, things simply began to appear, not with a bang, but with a slow, inevitable unfolding of eternity. First came Gaia, Earth herself. She wasn't born into the world. She was the world. Hills, valleys, rivers, forests, all would one day rise from her body. Gaia wasn't just a nurturing mother figure. She was the ultimate matriarch, fertile, vast, and, as we'll soon see, not someone to be taken lightly. She was life's first foundation, solid beneath our feet, even before there were feet to stand on. Next came Tartarus, the deep abyss. Not quite hell, though later storytellers would shape it that way. Tartarus was more like the basement of reality, far beneath Gaia's surface, darker than night itself. One day, it would become a prison for divine rebels, but for now, it simply existed, a brooding echo beneath the forming cosmos. Then arrived Eros, not the cherubic Cupid with his love arrows, but a far older, more abstract force. This Eros was the glue that bound existence together. He was the drive toward creation, the principle of attraction that made Gaia fertile and gave shape to the shapeless. Without him, chaos would have stayed just that, chaotic. With him, the universe took its first breath. From chaos also emerged Nyx, the night, a figure wrapped in darkness and mystery, older than any god who would come after. She commanded such deep reverence that even mighty Zeus would think twice before crossing her. Alongside her came Erebus, the darkness of the underworld, not evil, just unlit. Together, Nyx and Erebus gave birth to a host of shadowy offspring. Hypnos, sleep, Thanatos, death, Moros, doom, Nemesis, retribution, and others whose names sound like they belong in Gothic novels. These primordial beings weren't quite gods in the way we imagine them. They didn't stroll down in disguise to seduce shepherds or meddle in mortal affairs. They were concepts, forces, given just enough shape to be understood, but barely anthropomorphic. They were nature before nature learned to speak in poetry. Gaia, however, had other plans. She decided it was time for company. And so, without a partner, much like someone planting a garden alone, she gave birth to Uranus, the sky. He wasn't a bearded old man lounging on a cloud. Uranus was the entire dome of heaven, stretching over Gaia in an eternal embrace. The ancients believed the sky was a solid thing, a firmament, like a divine lid fitted snugly over the earth. Together, Gaia and Uranus began to populate the universe, not with animals or trees, but with beings, their children, the first true generation of gods. These were the Titans. There were 12 of them in the classic tradition. Oceanus, who encircled the earth with his watery arms. Hyperion, the light bringer and father of the sun, moon, and dawn. Ceus and Crius, whose names now mostly live in crossword puzzles. Themis, wise goddess of natural law and order. Mnemosyne, memory made flesh. Phoebe, whose intellect shone bright. And Rhea, who would one day become mother to gods. Then there was Cronus, the youngest, sharpest, and arguably the most dangerous of them all. But Gaia's creativity didn't stop with the Titans. She and Uranus also brought forth the Cyclopes, massive one-eyed smiths with a talent for forging storms, and the Cinemanes, being so fantastically designed they defy imagination, each with 50 heads and 100 arms. Try finding gloves for that. Uranus, strangely squeamish for a cosmic entity, was repulsed by these unconventional children. He called them monstrous and, in an act of divine repression, forced them back into Gaia's womb. Not symbolically. Literally. One can only imagine how uncomfortable that must have been. Gaia, for all her patience, was not passive. She groaned under the strain, quite literally, and eventually decided enough was enough. She forged a great sickle from flint, one of the few materials available in a universe still under construction, and, in hushed tones, called upon her Titan sons to rise against their father. Only one answered. Cronus. Clever Cronus. Ambitious Cronus. The youngest of the Titans, and the only one willing to get his hands dirty. Under cover of night, Cronus lay in wait. As Uranus descended to embrace Gaia, Cronus struck. With one swift, merciless motion, he castrated the sky. Yes, this is not metaphor. The Greeks told their myths with vivid, unflinching detail. From the blood of Uranus that spilled upon Gaia sprang the Furies, agents of vengeance, along with the giants, those hulking enemies of the later gods, and the Milii, gentle ash tree nymphs, a strangely tender addition to such a brutal harvest. Uranus's severed part tumbled into the sea. From a churning foam that followed emerged Aphrodite, radiant, beautiful, and paradoxically born from an act of violence. Greek mythology, it seems, finds no contradiction between beauty and butchery. With Uranus overthrown, Cronus took the throne of the cosmos. The Titans now ruled, and Cronus married his sister Rhea. Divine family trees, as you may have noticed, tend to twist on themselves like ivy on a ruined temple. Together, they presided over what later generations would call the Golden Age, a time without suffering, war, or want, though notably without humans too, but pleasant enough for the gods. But peace in myth is always fragile. Cronus, like his father before him, grew wary. In his final, pained breath, Uranus had warned that one of Cronus's own children would rise to overthrow him. Just as he had done, the seed of paranoia took root, and it bore bitter fruit. So Cronus devised a strategy, brutal, efficient, and utterly lacking in compassion. Each time Rhea bore him a child, he swallowed it whole. One by one, Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon disappeared into their father's belly. Not killed, just stored away. Cronus became less a king and more a walking nursery. But that part of the tale, well, we'll come to it soon enough. Before we leave this cosmic dawn behind, it's worth pausing and consider what these stories really mean. Myth is never just entertainment. It's philosophy in sandals. Uranus's overthrow isn't merely divine patricide. It's the triumph of change over stagnation. Gaia's rebellion speaks to the enduring strength of the earth and the refusal of the feminine to be silenced. And Cronus, god of time himself, becomes a cautionary tale. Even time cannot outrun destiny. These myths don't belong to the Greeks alone. They echo across ancient cultures like ripples in a shared human dream. The Hittites told of Kamarbi, who overthrew the sky god Anu by biting off his genitals. Yes, once again, the genitals. The Babylonians sang of Marduk's epic battle with Tiamat, the monstrous mother of chaos, whose body he split to form the heavens and the earth. In each story, the old order is shattered to make room for the new. It's no accident that these tales emerge from early civilizations wrestling with the nature of power, the rise and fall of kings, the turning tides of rebellion, the uneasy transfer of authority from one generation to the next. In myth, we see the first blueprints of monarchy, revolution, and even generational trauma, sketched boldly in the language of legend. And so the stage is set. The Titans now stride across the world, vast, luminous, and embodying the raw forces of nature and cosmic order. Humanity has not yet appeared. Olympus is still just a whisper on the horizon. The gods, such as they are, behave less like characters with personalities, and more like living laws of the universe itself. Yet even now, the cycle has already begun. Cronus has overthrown his father, and in time, he too will be overthrown. Because in every age, in every myth, the same quiet truth waits in the wings. Time devours all. By all ancient accounts, the reign of Cronus was a rather lovely era, provided, of course, you weren't one of his children. To most, it was a golden age, a time when the earth gave freely of its bounty, the seasons rolled gently by, and mortals, if they existed at all, knew nothing of taxes, back pain, or unsolicited prophecies. There were no wars, no crime, and best of all, no gods bickering from mountaintops. It was a time before laws were needed, because, so the myth claims, no one had yet thought to do wrong. One imagines it felt a bit like an eternal Sunday afternoon, only without the tea shortage. But beneath this placid surface, a quiet tension stirred, not in the world, but in its ruler. Cronus, Titan of time and king of all that was, carried a secret dread. He had become the very thing he once destroyed. To his credit, he had overthrown Uranus to end cruelty and repression. But as so often happens, in myth and in monarchy alike, the rebel becomes a tyrant the moment the crown touches his brow. Cronus had heard a prophecy, not from some mystical oracle or wandering seer, but from his own wounded father, Uranus. In the bitter wisdom that follows great loss, Uranus had muttered that one day a child of Cronus would rise and cast him down, just as he had done. That kind of warning lingers in the mind. So Cronus chose what can only be called an unconventional parenting strategy. He swallowed his children whole. Each time his wife and sister, because in these myths, family lines twist like vines. Rhea gave birth. Cronus opened wide and gulped the baby down. No chewing, no ceremony, just one divine swallow after another. Like oysters, only far more conscious. First came Hestia, goddess of hearth and home. Then Demeter, who would one day nourish the earth with grain. Next was Hera, future queen of Olympus, followed by Hades and Poseidon, lords of the underworld and the sea. One by one, each vanished into Cronus' belly. Still alive, still growing, though what conditions awaited them inside his divine digestive tract remains a mystery best left to the poets. Rhea, understandably, grew weary of this arrangement. One can forgive her hesitation to protest outright. After all, her husband had just opposed his own father with a flint sickle. But after the fifth child disappeared, even the most patient Titaness reaches her limit. So when she became pregnant for the sixth time, she sought help, not from Cronus, certainly, and not from any bureaucratic divine office, but from her own mother, Gaia, the original Earth Mother, who, as always, had a plan. When the time came, Rhea secretly traveled to the island of Crete, a place that, in myth, seems perpetually reserved for hiding divine infants. There, in a cave high on Mount Ida, she gave birth to her youngest son, Zeus. To trick Cronus, she wrapped a large stone in swaddling clothes, a convincingly baby-shaped bundle, and presented it to him as the newborn. Ever efficient, and perhaps not the most discerning parent, Cronus swallowed it without hesitation. Whether this says more about his paranoia or his palate for geology is anyone's guess. And so Zeus was hidden away, raised in secret in that Cretan cave. Some say he was nurtured by nymphs. Others tell of a she-goat named Amalthea, whose milk fed him. The details shift with the storyteller, but the heart remains. The future king of the gods grew strong on wild honey, mountain air, and a quiet sense of destiny. To muffle his cries, a band of warriors, the Curetes, danced wildly, clashing their shields in rhythmic thunder, drowning out the infant's wails. It's one of the rare moments in myth where interpretive dance doubles as national security. Meanwhile, back in the royal courts of the cosmos, Cronus went about his days utterly unaware that his downfall was already growing strong in a distant cave. Now let's pause for a moment, because while the Titans schemed and swallowed, the Greeks saw the world as deeply alive with divine presence. The gods weren't distant rulers in the sky. They were woven into the very fabric of existence. Trees whisper with dryads. Rivers flowed with naiads. Every breeze, every storm, every flicker of flame held a spirit. Time itself, as embodied by Cronus, wasn't just a measurement. It was a being. His rule wasn't just power. It was inevitability. You couldn't bargain with time or outrun it. And so the idea that even he would one day be overthrown spoke to something deeper. That even time must yield to what comes next. Back in Crete, Zeus grew tall, fierce, and unlike his Titan kin. Not without a flair for the dramatic. When he came of age, he returned not with brute force alone, but with cunning. In one version of the tale, he enlisted Metis, goddess of wisdom, who prepared a potent emetic potion. Cronus drank it, perhaps thinking of peace offering, and promptly vomited up his children in reverse order. First a stone, still neatly wrapped, then Poseidon, Hades, Hera, Demeter, and finally Hestia. Each emerged fully grown, blinking in the light, and very likely furious about the whole experience. Reunited at last, the 6 siblings didn't retreat into quiet exile or seek therapy. No, they declared war. A great, terrible, decade-long war. The Titanomachy was about to begin. But that is a story for the next chapter. For now, let's reflect on what this part of the myth reveals. The image of a father swallowing his children may seem ghastly, but it's a powerful metaphor that appears in myths across the ancient world. In Mesopotamian tales, older gods are imprisoned or consumed by the new. In Vedic traditions, divine children are hidden, protected, and returned in sacred cycles. All point to the same truth. The younger generation is both a hope and a threat. Every new life quietly signals the end of the old order. Power, after all, is never permanent, not even for gods. And in the myth of Cronus, we also find the seeds of how time itself came to be understood. His name, Cronus, would later merge in the Greek mind with Chronos, the personification of time. They may have begun as separate figures, but myth, like rivers, tend to blend its tributaries over time. And so Cronus became time, devouring, inevitable, and yet always destined to be surpassed. Of course, here is your full passage rewritten in a calm, natural, storytelling tone, free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, and excessive condensation, while preserving the richness, rhythm, and detail of the original. Tributaries. Cronus becomes time. And what does time do if not consume all things? Yet time also creates. From the belly of Cronus emerged the future gods of Olympus, not dead but preserved, waiting. Time devoured them. Yes, but in swallowing them whole, it also made their return inevitable. It's a rather elegant metaphor, don't you think? One of cycles, rebirth, and revolutions, destruction and renewal woven into a single breath. One final note about that stone baby. According to later myths, Zeus placed a swaddle rock at Delphi, the sacred navel of the world, as a marker. It became known as the omphalos, a cosmic belly button of sorts. Pilgrims would journey for miles just to see it. A simple stone wrapped in ancient cloth, representing the precise moment the cosmos began to turn. And so ends a brief, uneasy reign of Cronus as supreme ruler, him who tried to outrun fate by devouring his children, only to be undone by the one he never truly knew. One could almost pity him if he weren't such a profoundly unpleasant father. Now the stage is set. On one side stand the Titans, ancient, vast, rooted in the primal forces of earth, sea, and sky. On the other, the Olympians, younger, bolder, crackling with ambition, and very much in the mood to shake the heavens. The battle between them will shatter mountains, boil oceans, and make the stars tremble in their courses. But that, as always, is a story for another night. For now, we leave young Zeus triumphant in his first great act, standing at the edge of war with lightning in his blood and rebellion in his heart. The old order has been challenged. The storm is gathering, and Cronus, poor, fated Cronus, is left wondering how it all went so terribly wrong. War had never truly come to the cosmos before. Until now, divine conflicts have been more poetic than violent. Uranus overthrown in a single, gruesome stroke, less a battle than a brutal intervention. The other Titans had simply nodded along, perhaps relieved to be free of a father who treated his children like overgrown houseplants. But when Zeus freed his sibling from Cronus's belly, something changed. For the first time, two generations of gods stood face to face, not as family, but as enemies. This wasn't a squabble over burnt offerings or missed solstice rituals. This was war. Capital W. The kind bards would later sing with cracked voices and trembling hands. On one side stood the Titans, ancient, elemental, immense. They were the living embodiment of the world's raw forces, the endless ocean, the blazing sun, the turning heavens. Powerful, yes, but rigid, accustomed to reverence, not resistance. Opposite them were the Olympians, younger, hungrier, armed with a sense of destiny so potent could curdle milk. Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades led the charge, supported by their sisters, Hera, Demeter, and Hestia, and a growing circle of divine allies. These weren't distant abstractions. They were gods with personalities, desires, flaws, and the kind of confidence only immortality and zero financial responsibilities can give. This war will become known as the Titanomachy, a word best spoken slowly, perhaps over a stiff drink. It means Battle of the Titans, though that hardly captures its scale. This wasn't just a fight for the throne. It was a rupture in the very fabric of existence. Mountains shattered. Rivers reversed course. The sky cracked open. The battlefield, traditionally said to be Thessaly, likely spilled far beyond any map, encompassing earth, sea, and sky. For 10 long years, the war raged. Neither side could gain the upper hand. The Titans fought from Mount Othrys, a somber, ancient peak that matched their gravity. The Olympians held Mount Olympus, which at the time was modest, even humble, but destined to become the celestial palace of legend. It was a divine stalemate, lightning clashing against stone, earthquakes shaking the deep, the air thick with the clang of immortal arms. But the Titans had a fatal flaw. They lacked imagination. Their power was immense, but static. The Olympians, by contrast, adapted. They learned. They evolved. And soon, they found the allies they needed to tip the balance. Entered Gaia once more, the primordial Earth Mother, ever watchful, ever intervening at just the right moment. Perhaps she favored her grandson Zeus. Perhaps she simply enjoyed a well-orchestrated upheaval. Whatever her reasons, she revealed a crucial truth. The Titans could be defeated, but only if the Olympians freed those Cronus had betrayed. The Cyclopes, the Cenomans. You remember them? Those 100-handed, 50-headed giants and the one-eyed smiths. Cast down first by Uranus, then imprisoned by Cronus, now languishing in the depths of Tartarus. Desperate times call for desperate rescues. Zeus descended into the abyss, fought past monstrous guards, and threw open the prison doors. In gratitude, the Cyclopes forged divine weapons. For Zeus, the thunderbolt. For Poseidon, the trident. For Hades, the helm of darkness, said to render its wearer not only invisible, but insufferably smug. Armed with these gifts, and with the Cenomans hurling boulders like celestial artillery, the Olympians turned the tide. Picture the battlefield now. The air humming with divine fury, lightning arcing like comets, trees uprooted and flung like spears, mountains gouged by falling stars. At the center stood Zeus, no longer the hidden infant of Crete, but a storm god incarnate, flinging thunder as though it were a family pastime. Cronus fought fiercely, wielding the same sickle that had unmade Uranus. Around him rallied the Titans, Atlas, Hyperion, Iapetus, and others, towering and terrible. But time was against them in every sense. This was no longer their world. In the final, cataclysmic battle, said to rage without pause for days, Zeus unleashed his full might. The sky split. Fire poured from the earth. One by one, the Titans fell. The male Titans were cast into Tartarus, imprisoned behind adamantine gates, guarded, ironically, by the very Cenomans they once despised. Cronus himself was bound and vanished into mythic obscurity. Later poets would soften his fate, placing him in the Isles of the Blessed, ruling peacefully among the dead, or recasting him as a gentle god of harvest, a kind of divine retirement. Perhaps the female Titans, Rhea, Themis, Mnemosyne, were spared, maybe out of respect, maybe because the Olympians knew better than to challenge the embodiments of law, memory, and fate. One Titan, however, received a special punishment, Atlas, for his role in the rebellion, Zeus condemned him not to hold up the earth, as modern statues mistakenly show, but the sky itself forever, a solitary figure at the edge of the world, muscles locked in eternal strain, with no relief, no end. The original upper body workout. With the Titans vanquished, the age of the Olympians began. But power, as ever, came with burdens. Zeus divided the cosmos with his brothers. The sky for himself, the sea for Poseidon, the underworld for Hades, not a hell, but shadowed realm of ghosts, dreams, and the occasional ill-advised hero. Earth remained neutral ground, a shared stage for mortals, myths, and divine meddling. And so the gods took up residence on Mount Olympus. Not just a mountain, but a palace of cloud-woven halls, golden thrones, and feasts of ambrosia. It was also a place of drama, jealousy, and love affairs so tangled they'd make a soap opera blush. But peace was fleeting. Gaia, once again displeased, perhaps by the harsh treatment of her Titan sons, gave birth to a new challenger, Typhon, a monster of pure chaos. But that is a tale for another night. Let us pause here and consider what the Titanomachy truly means. It is not just a war of gods. It is a symbolic clash between the old and the new, between static, eternal forces and the dynamic, passionate personalities of the Olympians. The Titans represent inevitability, the sun rising, the tides turning, the stars wheeling. The Olympians represent change, desire, rebellion, emotion, the very stuff of human life. In Greek thought, this war marks the moment the cosmos stopped being abstract and became personal. The Titans didn't interfere in mortal lives. The Olympians would meddle endlessly, punishing, rewarding, falling in love, often with alarming consequences. They were gods made in humanity's image, relatable, flawed, and terrifyingly alive. Historically, the myth may echo real cultural shifts, the absorption of older, pre-Hellenic deities into the Olympian pantheon, or parallels with Near Eastern myths where younger gods overthrow primordial chaos. But its lasting power lies in its drama, the idea that even gods must struggle, that victory comes not just from strength, but from strategy, unity, and yes, a timely bit of divine vomit. It's also a testament to the Greek gift for storytelling. They gave us gods who weep, scheme, laugh, and seduce. From the rubble of war, they built a cosmos not of distant principles, but of vivid characters. And so, as the dust settles over Othrys, as Tartarus echoes with the groans of fallen Titans, and Olympus gleams with newborn glory, we stand at the threshold of a new world. But the gods inherit more than thrones. They inherit prophecy, pride, and the seeds of their own downfall. Because if Greek myth teaches us anything, it's this. No reign is eternal, not even for the gods. The war was over. The Titans had fallen, their thunder silenced, their thrones crumbled beneath the weight of time, and what passed for justice among the divine. Zeus and his siblings now rule from their glittering perch atop Olympus, looking down on a cosmos that was, if not perfect, at least organized. Cronus was banished. The Titans' stronghold lay in ruins. The Cyclopes returned to their forges. And the Cenomanians blessed their 100 hands, found steady work as prison guards, a rare success story in divine rehabilitation. But if you think peace followed triumph, you've never read a Greek myth. Zeus, now king, faced a problem as old as power itself, legitimacy. Winning a throne is one thing, keeping it is another. And beneath Olympus's triumphant hymns, an old whisper persisted, asterisk prophecy star. Gaia and Uranus had once warned Cronus he'd be overthrown by his child. That came true in stomach-churning fashion. Now cruel irony, or perhaps fate, had turned its gaze on Zeus. Another oracle declared he, too, would one day be dethroned by his own offspring. Zeus, no fool, took this very seriously. He'd just waged a cosmic war to escape his father's fate. He wasn't about to end up digested or dismembered. So he did what insecure rulers have done since time began. He tried to outwit destiny. This is where the story takes a strange turn. Zeus had many lovers, mortals, nymphs, goddesses, even clouds in disguise. But one stood apart, Métis, whose name means wisdom or cunning counsel. She wasn't just beautiful. She was brilliant, the embodiment of practical intelligence. When Métis became pregnant, another prophecy confirmed Zeus's worst fear. Her child would surpass him, and her second child, a son, would be powerful enough to overthrow even the king of gods. Zeus didn't hesitate. He swallowed her whole. Yes, just like Cronus, but with a twist. Metis didn't die. She lived inside him, whispering wisdom from within, and the child kept growing. Soon, Zeus was struck by blinding, cosmic headaches, as if an idea were trying to claw its way out of his skull. Desperate, he called upon Hephaestus, or, in some tellings, Prometheus or Hermes, who split his head open with a bronze axe. From the wound sprang Athena, fully grown, armored, spear in hand, letting out a battle cry that shook heaven and earth. It was, to say the least, a memorable entrance. Athena became one of Olympus's greatest gods, goddess of wisdom, strategy, and civilization. Loyal to her father, uninterested in rebellion, she embodied the perfect resolution to the prophecy. The child had come, but not as a threat. The cycle had been fulfilled and defused. Still, the fear of usurpation lingered in Zeus's heart. He'd seen it happen twice. Perhaps that's why he ruled with such flair, a mix of charm and tyranny, justice and thunderous wrath. He could uphold oaths and break them in the same breath. Meanwhile, the other Olympians carved out their domains. Poseidon ruled the seas, but not without rivalry. In the contest for Athens, his gift of a saltwater spring lost to Athena's olive tree. Practical Athenians chose olives and a goddess. Hades, often misunderstood, ruled the underworld with quiet order, rarely surfacing, except famously for Persephone. Demeter tended the earth's fertility. Hestia kept the sacred hearth burning. And Hera, goddess of marriage, endured Zeus's endless affairs with a mixture of fury and dignity. Olympus thrived in its beautifully dysfunctional way. But Gaia wasn't finished. Her Titan son still groaned in Tartarus. And she, who had birthed sky and earth, who had helped topple 2 generations of rulers, now stirred with fresh indignation. From her depths, she gave birth to Typhon, a storm given form, 100 dragon heads roaring with primal chaos. If the Titanomachy was a war of gods, this would be something deeper, a battle between order and raw, untamed fury. But that is a tale for the next breath, the next thunderclap. For now, we leave Olympus in its fragile peace, a mountain crowned in glory, yet haunted by prophecy, betrayal, and the distant rustle of wings. And in this calm, one truth remains. In Greek myth, power is never given. It is seized, defended, and above all outwitted. The gods are not distant icons, but living contradictions, flawed, magnificent, and forever at war with fate. And though the Titans had fallen, their story wasn't truly over. Even in defeat, the old powers whispered through the cracks of the world, waiting, as all fallen empires do, for a chance to rise again. Of course, here is your final passage rewritten in a calm, natural, bedtime-friendly storytelling tone, free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, or abrupt shifts, while preserving all the richness, rhythm, and mythic depth of the original. To life, and Zeus was livid. He could forgive many things, rebellion, arrogance, even occasional dalliance with a mortal, but not defiance, not when it made him look foolish. So he crafted a punishment both eternal and excruciating. Prometheus was bound to a rock. Some say in the lonely heights of the Caucasus, others on a barren peak so desolate, even goats refuse to climb it. Each day, an eagle sacred to Zeus would descend and tear into his side, pecking out his liver, and each night, by the cruel magic of his immortality, the liver would grow back, whole, tender, ready to be devoured again. To the ancient Greeks, the liver wasn't just an organ. It was a seat of emotion, courage, and vitality. So this torment wasn't merely physical. It was a daily unraveling of his very soul, renewed without mercy. A bit excessive, perhaps, but then again, moderation was never Zeus's strong suit. Yet Prometheus wasn't the only one who suffered for his love of humanity. The mortals, now warmed by fire and awakened to possibility, also drew the wrath of heaven. Zeus, ever theatrical in his anger, devised a punishment laced with poetic irony. He created a woman, enter Pandora, before we leap to modern judgment. It's worth remembering that the Greeks, especially Hesiod, held a complicated view of her. She was breathtakingly beautiful, yes, but also cunning, complex, and shaped by the hands of all the gods. Her very name means all-gifted, for each deity had bestowed upon her a trait. Aphrodite gave charm, Apollo music. Hermes' curiosity, though patience, it seems, slipped through the cracks. She arrived bearing not a box, as centuries of mistranslation would have it, but a great sealed jar. Inside lay every evil yet unknown to humankind. Pain, famine, jealousy, disease, deceit, and yes, taxes. And alongside them that quiet, insistent itch, curiosity. Predictably, she opened it, outpoured suffering in all its forms, scattering across the earth like ink spilled over a blank scroll. By the time she slammed the lid shut, only one thing remained inside: hope. For the world was shifting again, not toward gods, but toward something deeper: fate. The Greeks believed power flowed like the tide. No one ruled forever. Not Uranus, not Cronus, and not Zeus. And behind every myth, like a shadow at the banquet, whispered the same dread. Zeus, too, would fall. Prophecies echoed the same pattern. Just as Cronus overthrew Uranus, and Zeus overthrew Cronus, so too would Zeus be toppled by his own son, a divine game of patricidal dominoes. Naturally, Zeus grew paranoid. He swallowed Métis to prevent her from bearing a son. He punished descent with lightning. He tightened his grip, the surest sign, history tells us, that a reign is beginning to crack. Yet collapse didn't come all at once. Instead, the Olympian order began to fray, not through war, but through contradiction. Mortals started to question. Philosophers rose. The gods, once terrifying and remote, became flawed, comic, even absurd. Dionysus challenged Apollo in Delphi. Heroes like Heracles, bore divine and mortal blood, didn't merely obey the gods. They negotiated with them, tricked them. Heracles, remember, freed Prometheus, an act that subtly undermined Zeus's authority without sparking open rebellion. In Heracles, we see something new, a figure who stands between titans and men. Not a god, not a titan, but a bridge. And he wasn't alone. Perseus, Bellerophon, Theseus, all emerged in this liminal space, channeling the chaotic energy of the old world toward mortal ends. Here, myth and history begin to blur. As Greek civilization matured, cities claimed descent from gods. Families traced lineages to heroes. The Titans, once vast cosmic forces, became symbols of chaos, of untamed nature, of the wild powers that had to be subdued before the polis, the city-state, could rise. Even the gods were domesticated. They gained temples, priests' rituals. Still powerful, yes, but now bound by narrative, by decorum, by the very mortals who once trembled before them. Perhaps that's the final insult to the Titans, not their defeat, but their absorption. Cronus wasn't just imprisoned. He was reimagined. In later traditions, he became a gentle god of harvest and peace. The devourer became Cronus. Father Time, a fusion of myth and metaphor over centuries. Gaia, the primal earth mother, was reduced to symbolic soil beneath our feet. And the mighty Titanomachy became a cautionary tale, told by poets to warn against rebellion, or by kings to justify their rule. Myth is never static. It evolves. It serves whoever speaks it loudest. And yet, the Titans endure, not in temples, not in statues, but deeper in the subconscious, in the quake beneath our feet, in the roar of the sea, in the fury of a storm no god can command, in the impulse to rebel, to question, to light a fire even when the world demands obedience. They are not gone, not really. You cannot banish what you are made of, for we are all in some distant thread of our being, children of the Titans, born of chaos, tempered by fire, reaching always upward, not to serve the divine, but to understand it, even to challenge it. And as the age of heroes draws near, as mortals begin to tell their own stories, the Titans don't vanish. They transform. They wait, in Tartarus, in memory, in us. As the dust of divine war settled and Olympus gleamed in its post-war glory, a quiet shift began, not in the heavens, but on earth. The age of Titans was over. The age of Olympians had begun. But now, The torch was passing, not upward, as it had from Gaia to Uranus, from Uranus to Cronus, from Cronus to Zeus, but downward, down to the strange, flawed, astonishing creatures known as mortals. Welcome, then, to the heroic age, when Titan blood still flickered in human veins, when Olympian whims ruled from above, and humankind, at last, stepped into the starring role of the cosmic drama. Of course, here is your passage rewritten in a calm, natural, bedtime-friendly storytelling tone, free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, or academic dryness, while preserving the full richness, rhythm, and mythic atmosphere of the original. It was a time of monsters and riddles, of hubris and honor, and of very large men attempting very impossible things. And it's worth remembering, the Greeks didn't see the heroic age as mere metaphor. To them, it was real, a golden era nestled neatly between myth and memory. It came after the wild, chaotic birth of the gods, but before the fog of recorded history. These weren't just bedtime stories. They were origin tales, political, familial, even moral. And the heroes within them? They felt less like fictional characters and more like living fossils. Echoes of a world that had truly existed just beyond the edge of living recollection. And the first among them, the archetype of all heroes, was Heracles, or Hercules, if you prefer your heroes Roman and slightly more sculpted. Born of Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, Heracles was living proof that gods could not resist mortal women, and that mortals could not escape the consequences. Poor Alcmene, by the way, was tricked into lying with Zeus when he disguised himself as her husband. Zeus, it must be said, would have made an outstanding actor, but a deeply troubling partner. Heracles entered the world not as a symbol of glory, but as a threat. Hera, Zeus's wife, burned with jealousy, and she made it her mission to make his life hell. As an infant, he famously strangled 2 serpents sent by Hera to kill him in his cradle. While most babies wrestle with teething, Heracles wrestled with venomous snakes. The tone was set. His life would be defined by suffering, not because he was especially wicked, though he was far from wise, but because he was too much, too strong, too passionate, too touched by gods who saw him as both weapon and pawn. The 12 labors, his punishment for murdering his wife and children in a fit of divine madness sent by Hera, were more than penance. They were purification. Each task sent him deeper into wild, to slay beasts, capture monsters, even journey into the underworld itself. And in doing so, he wasn't just completing chores. He was peeling away the chaos of his Titan ancestry, shedding the weight of divine expectation. In a very Greek way, he was being civilized through suffering. What's curious is how many of the creatures he faced were direct descendants of the old Titan world. The Nemean lion, offspring of Orthus, who was born of Echidna and Typhon. The Hydra, also from Echidna and Typhon. Cerberus, the 3-headed hound of Hades, wrestled in the final labor? Same ghastly bloodline. In truth, Heracles wasn't just performing labors. He was cleaning up the remnants of the Titan Age, one monster at a time. But he wasn't alone. The heroic age was a parade of mighty mortals, all straining under the weight of legacy. Perseus, who beheaded Medusa, one of the Gorgons, likely once a revered figure in older Earth goddess cults before the Olympians recast her as a monster. Theseus, who braved a labyrinth to kill the Minotaur, a beast born of divine punishment and mortal pride, its horns echoing ancient Minoan bull worship. Jason, leader of the Argonauts, whose quest of the Golden Fleece read less like a myth and more like a high-stakes diplomatic mission tangled in betrayal, family drama, and a sorceress named Medea, who, as we all know, did not take rejection well. All these figures, larger than life, doomed to fall, shared one trait. They were liminal. They belonged neither fully to gods nor to mortals. They existed in the in-between space, much like the Titans before them. But where the Titans embodied primal chaos, power unbound, the heroes represented something newer, individual in the face of divine indifference. By this point, the gods had grown distant. Zeus was less a thunder-wielding monarch and more a spectral administrator. Hera was pure, seething grudge. Athena, though wise, was oddly fickle in her favors. And so, the mortals began to shine, not because they were perfect, but because they dared. The Greeks warned that hubris was a great sin, and yet, paradoxically, it was also the engine of the heroic age. To be a hero was to reach beyond your station, to say, asterisk, I will slay this beast. I will found this city. I will sail past the edge of the known world. Asterisk, it was to challenge limits. And in every one of these myths, that challenge was tied, consciously or not, to the slow defeat of the Titan spirit. And yet, the Titans were never truly gone. They echoed in the monsters, in the forgotten gods, in the strange lands heroes wandered. Tartarus still yawned beneath everything, a dark counterweight to Olympus's gleaming heights. Atlas still held up the sky, punished not just for rebellion, but for his very endurance. Prometheus remained chained to his rock, until Heracles, walking demolition project that he was, finally set him free. And Cronus, though banished to the far edges of myth, he occasionally reappeared, in Orphicyms as a neutral force of time, or in visions of a future golden age where he'd rule in peace, a kind of celestial retirement. This is where myth begins to merge with philosophy. As Greece entered its classical age, thinkers like Hesiod, Plato, and later the Stoics began reading these old tales not as literal history, but as allegory. The Titans became inner forces. Cronus' time, Gaia as nature, Prometheus as a rebellious mind. The heroic age, then, was a mirror held to human soul, a time when mortals struggled not just against monsters, but against fate, family, and the gods themselves. It was the final echo of the Titanomachy, not in the heavens, but on earth, and it was ending, for as the myths evolved, they lost their raw, immediate power. The age of oracles gave way to the age of philosophers. The hero, once a demigod, became a king, then a general, then simply a man with ambition. The divine lost its teeth. The world grew quieter, more familiar, though not entirely tame. Magic still flickered. God still meddled. But the wildness was fading, and that in some ways is the true tragedy of the Titans. They weren't just beings. They were forces of rupture, necessary, terrifying, sublime. Their war with the Olympians wasn't just about who ruled the cosmos. It was a universe straining to hold contradiction. Chaos and order, instinct and reason, nature and law. The heroes, knowingly or not, carried that tension forward. They tried to tame it, conquer it, live with it. Some succeeded. Most did not. But all of them, Heracles, Perseus, Theseus, Jason, lived in the shadow of something older, wilder, and far less forgiving. And now that age is closing. The last great heroes vanish into legend. The gods become poetic symbols. The Titans, already half forgotten, are reduced to footnotes in ancient hymns. But before we say goodbye, we must understand. Their story is not one of simple defeat. It is one of transformation. How raw power becomes memory. How myth becomes metaphor. How, even buried in Tartarus, the Titans still shape the world above. Even now, when we speak of rebellion, of endurance, of reaching beyond what we're told is possible, we are speaking the language of Titans. And so we come to the end, or rather, the beginning of the end, for the tale of the Titans never truly concludes. They began before time as we know it, roaring through the cosmos like fire in dry grass. They ended, as all empires must, buried beneath their own grandeur and Zeus's lightning bolts. But in mythology, endings are rarely full stops. They are ellipses, pauses in the storm, quiet breaths before the next surge. Though defeated, exiled, even erased from memory, the Titans have never fully left us. They endure in symbols and stories, and, most surprisingly, in ourselves. The Greeks, ever restless, never left their myths untouched. Over centuries, the Titans were retold, repurposed, reimagined. By the Hellenistic age, they were no longer just rebellious gods. They were vast, impersonal forces. Cronus became time itself, cyclical, indifferent, unyielding. Gaia became nature, bountiful and brutal. Oceanus flowed not just as a titan, but as a current of reality. In this shift, the Titans moved from religion into philosophy. Plato and the Stoics saw allegory in their battles. Reason versus chaos, civilization versus impulse, logos against raw being. Rather sophisticated, really, for a story that began with son castrating his father with a flint sickle forged by his mother. And Prometheus? He refused to be forgotten. Over time, he became a patron saint of rebels, thinkers, and those who dared too much. To the Romantics, Byron, Shelley, Goethe, he was the ultimate symbol of enlightenment, punished not for evil, but for giving knowledge to humankind. He was, in spirit, the first scientist, the first revolutionary, the first tragic hero. But the Titans aren't confined to old scrolls or poetic musings. They've seeped into the modern world in subtle, profound ways. Consider our language. When we call something titanic, we don't just mean large. We mean vast, powerful, world-altering. The name Titan adorns ships, rockets, sports teams, even tech platforms, all proclaiming their ambition to reshape the world. One suspects Cronus might chuckle at cloud computing service bearing his name. There's something inherently seductive about the Titans. They represent the raw, untamed potential that exists before order arrives. They are older than law, older than morality, older even than justice. They're elemental. Earth, sky, ocean, time, fire. Their quarrels weren't political, they were cosmic. And in our increasingly structured, bureaucratic world, the idea of something ancient, wild, and unchained still tugs at the imagination. That's why they keep returning, in literature, film, art. Look closely and you'll see them everywhere. The shadow fathers of modern fiction, Tywin Lannister, Darth Vader, are Titans in all but name, creators of worlds undone by their own heirs. Anti-heroes like Walter White or Tony Montana. They're Prometheus figures, stealing fire, defying gods, burning for it. We don't always root for them, but we watch, spellbound, as they try to bend the world to their will, just as the Titans once did. Even the superhero genre, the mythology of our age, owes them a debt. The X-Men, feared for their power, straddle the same liminal space. Superman, raised among mortals but burdened with divine strength, echoes Heracles. These characters are too powerful to be human, too flawed to be gods, and in that, they are heirs to the Titan legacy. And behind it all, the Titanomachy still echoes. Every story of a younger generation toppling the old. Every tale of rebellion against cosmic authority. Every myth where the apprentice surpasses the master. It's all the same ancient rhythm, played now on modern instruments. The Greeks understood this cycle better than most. Their myths repeat like tides. Uranus falls to Cronus, who falls to Zeus, who, the oracles whisper, may one day fall too. The wheel turns. Every victory plants the seed of its own downfall. Even the gods are not immune to fate. Above them all stands Moira, Fate, spun by the three sisters, Clotho, Lachesis, Atropos. Not even Zeus, king of Olympus, can defy their thread. The Titans may have lost, but they played their part in the great script. And that script, dear listener, is still being written. What's most astonishing is how these stories, born among Bronze Age tribes on rocky Greek shores, have outlived empires, religions, and ages. They endure not because they're literally true, but because they're humanly true. We are all, in our own way, Titan-blooded. We carry within us the fire of rebellion, the weight of memory, the urge to shape the world. Every time we break a rule for a better cause, every time we defy authority in the name of justice, every time we dream bigger than we're told we should, that's a Titan's whisper in our ear. Of course, it comes at a cost. Prometheus suffered agony. Atlas bears endless weight. Cronus lives in exile. To carry Titan fire is to risk being burned. But the Greeks never shied from tragedy. They believed suffering brings understanding. Downfall brings wisdom. So we reflect not just on the epic rise and fall of the Titans, from chaos to Tartarus, but on what it means, why these stories still matter. Perhaps it's because the Titans remind us that greatness isn't born from perfection, but from conflict, from the storm, not the calm, from the tension between what is and what might be. They are the raw materials of myth and therefore of civilization itself. In them, we see not just gods and monsters, but the human heart writ large, proud, flawed, courageous, vengeful, creative. And in their downfall, we glimpse something deeply Greek. The knowledge that power must be tempered, that ambition must bow to balance, that even the mighty must yield. But oh, what a roar they made on their way down. And though Olympus gleams in the sunlight, though temples to Zeus stand in noble ruin, though statues of Athena watch over modern cities, the Titans lie deeper still, beneath the marble, beneath the stories, beneath the psyche, waiting, not for revenge, that ship has sailed, but for remembrance, because in remembering the Titans, we remember ourselves, not as we are, but as we once dared to be, vast, terrible, brilliant, and yes, Titan. So settle in now. Let the day dissolve into dusk. The flickering shadows on your walls? Just shadows. That low rumble in the distance? Only the wind. Certainly not the stirring of something ancient. Definitely not the slow, coiling tail of a creature vast enough to blot out the stars. But if you were an ancient Greek, oh, you'd be less certain. Because in their world, beneath the polished columns and orderly rites of Olympus, something always seethed, something ancient, something monstrous. And at the very bottom of that bestiary, lounging like a volcano on its day off, was Typhon, sometimes called Typhoeus, was no minor threat. He was the apocalypse with scales, the end of everything wrapped in a storm cloud. The Greeks loved to imagine their gods and monsters as one vast, dysfunctional family, where every holiday gathering required a sacrificial goat and at least 3 emergency exits. Typhon arrived late in this cosmic drama, born of Gaia's fury. She'd watched as Zeus and the Olympians overthrew her beloved Titan children, and though she was a nurturing mother, she made a terrible mother-in-law. In her rage, she mated with Tartarus, the endless abyss beneath the world. Not the most romantic union, but then again, Greek love stories rarely began with candlelight. From this dark coupling came Typhon, a creature so vast, so unspeakably terrifying, that even the Olympians fled at his approach. To describe him properly, we must abandon ordinary biology. Hesiod tells us Typhon's head brushed the stars. His arms stretched from east to west. His eyes blazed with fire. From the waist down, a writhing mass of venomous serpents, hissing, snapping, like a particularly hostile garden. And his voices, each of his many mouths spoke differently. Sometimes human, sometimes bull, sometimes lion, sometimes the roar of a volcano or the shriek of a hurricane. In short, he was the entire weather system, having a very bad day. Zeus, confident in his new world order, Cloud Palace's thunderbolts, Ambrosia on tap, thought the war was over. Then Typhon rose. Imagine the Olympians mid-feast, looking up to see the sky darken with an approaching silhouette, and realizing they'd celebrated a bit too soon. In most accounts, all the gods fled, transforming into animals and galloping off to Egypt. This, by the way, is why Greek and Egyptian gods sometimes look suspiciously alike, a kind of divine witness protection program. Zeus, to his credit, stayed. He met Typhon in battle. Lightning clashed against storm. Mountains trembled. The skies tore open. But here's the twist. Typhon won the first round. He tore the sinews from Zeus's limbs, literally disarming the king of gods, and imprisoned him in a cave, guarded by the she-dragon Delphine. It was only through the cunning of Hermes and Pan, the goat-legged god of the wild, moonlighting as a rescue operative, that Zeus was freed. With his sinews restored, he returned, gathered his strength, and faced Typhon one last time. Their final battle raged on Mount Etna in Sicily. Zeus hurled every thunderbolt he possessed. At last, Typhon fell, crushed beneath the mountain. And to this day, when Etna trembles and smokes, the Greeks say it's just Typhon, rolling over in his sleep. This wasn't just spectacle. Typhon served a deeper purpose. He was chaos, raw, untamed, natural chaos. The Greeks lived with earthquakes, eruptions, storms, the Earth's constant reminders that it doesn't care about human plans. Where we see tectonic plates, they saw Typhon. It was poetry, and frankly, more thrilling than sedimentary subduction. And Typhon wasn't alone. With Echidna, half woman, half serpent, he fathered a gallery of nightmares. But that is a tale for another night. Of course. Here is your passage rewritten in a calm, natural, sleep-friendly storytelling tone. free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, or abrupt shifts, while preserving all the mythic detail, atmosphere, and gentle rhythm ideal for bedtime listening. Cerberus, the three-headed hound who guarded the gates of the underworld. The Chimera, a fire-breathing fusion of lion, goat, and serpent. The Hydra, with its many heads that regrew the moment you cut them off, each breath laced with poison. The Sphinx, whose riddles didn't just puzzle the mind, they shattered it. The Nemean lion, whose golden hide no mortal weapon could pierce. And many more. We'll meet them again as our story winds deeper into the dark. In a way, Typhon and Echidna weren't so much a couple as they were a mythic forge, churning out monsters to populate the wild, dangerous edges of the Greek imagination. They weren't evil, exactly. They were necessary. The world needed shadows in order to have light. It needed nightmares to make heroism meaningful. But how did the ancients picture Typhon? Greek vase painters, never shy about decorating their wine jugs with scenes of divine trauma, sometimes gave him a serpentine lower half and great dragon wings. Other artists made him more human in shape, though still terrifying. His form was never fixed. And that's the point. Typhon wasn't just a character. He was an idea. He was a fear of the unknown, given just enough shape to haunt your dreams without fully revealing himself. By the Roman era, Typhon had begun to blur with other storm gods. The Alexandrian poet Cronus, writing in the 5th century CE, gave us one of the most dramatic retellings of the battle between Zeus and Typhon, a cosmic symphony of fire, thunder, and divine wrath. Not exactly a lullaby, but perfect for a stormy night by the hearth. Interestingly, the Egyptians, ever eager for a good mythic crossover, absorbed some of these ideas into their own beliefs. Greeks living in Egypt, especially in Alexandria, sometimes equated Typhon with Set, the desert god of chaos and storms. Another example of ancient cultural diffusion, stories flowing like rivers, merging as they go. And what became of Typhon, though buried beneath Mount Etna, technically defeated, though never truly dead? He never left the world's imagination. The volcanoes of southern Italy, especially Etna, were said to be his prison. When lava poured from the mountain's flanks, the Greeks knew that was Typhon's breath escaping, his fury made molten. In literature and later myth, Typhon became shorthand for unstoppable destruction, the cosmic final boss whose defeat marked the triumph not just of Zeus, but of order itself. Zeus wasn't merely powerful. He became the guardian of structure, reason, and balance over raw, untamed chaos. You might say, quietly as you drift toward sleep, that Typhon is the reason the world doesn't unravel every Tuesday. And yet, he's still there, sleeping, breathing, rolling over now and then, just to remind us, the earth beneath our feet is never truly still. So, dear listener, if you're lying there now in the hush of your room, and you feel the soft hum of the world beneath you, know this, the ancients heard it too. They gave it name. They gave it serpents for legs and fire for breath. They made it mighty. They made it monstrous. And then, with careful hands and hopeful hearts, they tucked it beneath a mountain, where it could do no harm unless the mountain sneezed. We've only just begun our descent into the monstrous. There are more jaws to count, more riddles to solve, and more serpents than any garden could ever want. But for now, close your eyes. Let the tale of Typhon roll away like a receding storm. Let your thoughts settle like ash on a quiet volcano. The fire has dimmed. The monster sleeps. And so should you. Close your eyes, if you haven't already. Let your breathing slow. Let the noise of the day soften, like a harp string falling silent in the dark. You're not in your room anymore. Tonight, you're drifting downward, deep into the quiet belly of the earth. Deeper still, into a place that is neither mortal nor divine, but something in between. And there, half in shadow, half in shimmer, waits Echidna, the so-called mother of monsters. She isn't famous like Medusa or Cerberus. No statues honor her. No temples echo with her name. But without her, many of the nightmares of Greek myth would never have drawn breath. She is old, older than Olympus, older than your pillow, older than memory itself. Her story is scattered through ancient scrolls and half-forgotten epics, like bones buried in mythic soil. But tonight, we gather those bones. Tonight, we meet the mother. The Greeks loved to explain the inexplicable with elaborate family trees. An earthquake? That's Typhon tossing in his sleep. Madness? A whisper from the Furies. A lion with skin no spear can pierce? That's just one of Echidna's children. She's described, when she's described at all, as half-beautiful woman, half-coiled serpent. Her upper body is alluring, almost divine. Her lower half? A gleaming, oily serpent's tail, forever winding, forever listening. There's poetic logic in it. The top to entice, the bottom to consume. Echidna wasn't just a mother in the ordinary sense. She was mythological fertility itself, the force that brought monstrous forms into being. She didn't give birth to one or two creatures. She birthed an entire ecosystem of terror. Paired with Typhon, they became the ultimate mythic couple. Between them, they produced nearly every beast that ever gave a Greek hero heartburn. Cerberus, the three-headed hound who guarded the gates of the underworld like a bouncer at the most exclusive club no one wants to enter. The Hydra, sprouting heads faster than you could chop them off. The Chimera, a fire-breathing hybrid, so confused it probably needed a map just to walk. The Sphinx with her deadly riddles. The Nemean lion, whose hide defied all weapons. Even the Caucasian eagle that pecked at Prometheus's liver each day. Asterisk, also asterisk hers. Quite the maternity ward. But who was Echidna? And why did the Greeks imagine such a being? The answer, as always, lies in fear and fertility. In the ancient world, the wilderness was a place for leisurely hikes or scenic views. It was dangerous, unknown, and crawling with things that hissed. Forests hid bandits. Mountains hurled storms. Caves housed gods or monsters or both. And beneath it all was a deep belief that wild nature gives birth to the things that frighten you. Echidna was a personification of that belief. She was a fertile chaos just beyond the city walls, the untamed womb of the wild. Not evil, exactly, just untamed. She wasn't meant to be worshipped, but respected, like the growl in the underbrush or the gleam in a predator's eye. Her name, Echidna, likely comes from an ancient word for viper, or perhaps from a language even older than Greek. She may be older than the myths that try to explain her, and that suits her. Many primordial goddesses are like that, fading into the edges of the story, yet holding everything together. Echidna rarely takes center stage. She's never the villain, never the hero. She simply is, breeding, waiting, lurking, and in that quiet, generative presence, she becomes one of the most powerful figures in myth. Not because she demands attention, but because she doesn't need to. She simply continues. In Hesiod's Theogony, one of the oldest and most influential Greek texts, Echidna is described as a nymph who lives in a cave, devouring any man who passes by. That might be metaphor. Or perhaps she just liked her snacks fresh. Either way, she wasn't someone you want to meet on an evening stroll. Hesiod also says she was immortal and ageless, a rather unfair advantage for a mother of so many. She lived in a hidden cave far from gods and mortals, near a place called Arima, though even the Greeks weren't sure where that was. Some said southern Anatolia. Others said deep beneath the earth. A few just politely changed the subject. Yet despite her shadowy role, her presence echoes through nearly every heroic tale. Think of the great monster slayers, Heracles, Bellerophon, Perseus, Odysseus. Almost all of them face one of Echidna's children. Each heroic deed, each monster conquered, was an echo of her legacy. She is the challenge behind the story, the breath behind the beast. And there's something deeply maternal in that. In ancient Greek society, women were often invisible in public life, but utterly central to family and culture. Echidna mirrors that role, silent in the myths, yet essential to their shape. She is the mother whose children define the trials of men. Later authors gave her more story. In Roman tradition, she's sometimes paired not with Typhon, but with Tartarus itself, a place, a being, a void, depending on your mood. Some even claimed her blood seeped into the earth and gave rise to monstrous kings in distant lands. In that version, her legacy wasn't just monsters, but empires. And that, perhaps, is the most frightening idea of all. In art, Echidna appears rarely. The Greeks preferred to paint her flashier children, easier to fit on pottery, more dramatic in profile. But when she is shown, she's unmistakable, a woman from the waist up, calm and unapologetic, with a serpent's tail coiling into the dark. She isn't writhing in agony. She isn't begging for understanding. She is simply Echidna. And what a strange power that is. To be monstrous without remorse, fear but not villainous, to give birth to terrors and never ask forgiveness for it. In modern times, her name lives on in biology. The echidna, a spiny egg-laying mammal from Australia, bears little resemblance to her mythic namesake, aside from being wonderfully peculiar. It's shy, ancient, and seems entirely unaware of how absurd it looks. One suspect's echidna would be flattered, but back to her myth. As Greek thought shifted from epic poetry to philosophy, monsters like echidna were explained away. Natural causes, allegories, metaphors. The torch of logic was turned on the dark corners of myth, and many shadows scattered. But not all. In the Renaissance, in Tolkien's and Caligon, in Lovecraft's Shub-Niggurath, in video games and fantasy novels, you'll still find her echo, because we still wonder, where did the first monster come from? And the answer always circles back to echidna. Because even now, when the world is mapped, measured, and most dragons have been replaced by tax forms, we still feel that tug at the edges, that sense that something wild, something ancient, still breathes beneath the surface. The Greeks gave that feeling a name. They gave it a shape. They gave a mother. So as you lie there tonight, drifting on the edge of sleep, know this. The cave still waits. The coiled tail still stirs. And the mother of monsters still dreams beneath the earth, birthing horrors in her sleep. She does not roar. She does not chase. She simply exists. And perhaps that is the most terrifying thing of all. Now, close your eyes. The world is quiet. The monsters are fed. And the mother is resting. So should you. Breathe in. Let the weight of the day fall away like sand through your fingers. You're not here. Not really. Not in your room. Not in your bed. You're walking through a darkening meadow under a silver moon. A cool mist curls around your ankles. Ahead, a black river winds across the land like a ribbon of ink. And just beyond it, massive, unmoving, ancient, stands a gate. Beside it, a soft growl. Something that does not sleep. You've come to the edge of the world. Or at least, the edge of the world as the Greeks imagined it. This is the entrance to the underworld. And the creature standing guard has 3 heads, each one hungering not for flesh, but for the soul of any trespasser. Meet Cerberus, the hound of Hades. Let go of modern expectations. Cerberus is not evil. He is not a villain. He doesn't chase heroes through alleyways or snarl in nightmares. No, he is far more dignified than that. He has a job, a role, a purpose. He is the guardian, the doorkeeper, the final threshold, and he is very, very good at it. Cerberus, sometimes spelled Kerberos in older tales, was a child of Echidna and Typhon, sibling to the Chimera, the Hydra, and other such charming relatives. But Cerberus was special. He wasn't made to rampage or terrorize. He was made to keep the balance, to keep the dead in and the living out. His appearance shifts across ancient sources. Some say 3 heads. Others claim 50 or even 100. He has a mane of writhing snakes, eyes that glow like lanterns, and sometimes a serpent for a tail. He's like a nightmare stitched together with divine purpose. But let's linger on the 3 heads. Why 3? Scholars and drowsy philosophers have long debated this. Some say they represent past, present, and future. Others suggest birth, youth, and old age, or body, soul, and spirit. Or perhaps the Greeks simply thought 3 heads were more impressive than 1, and left it at that. Imagine it. Triple the teeth, triple the growl, triple the stare, yet not cruel, not angry, just resolute. You see, the Greeks didn't fear death as an end. They feared imbalance, a soul in the wrong place, a living foot where only shade should tread. Cerberus ensured order. No ghost escaped. No mortal trespassed. He was, quite simply, the boundary. And what was this underworld like? Not fire and brimstone. No pitchforks or eternal torment. At least, not for most. It was quiet, shadowed, a place of memory more than suffering. The blessed wandered the Elysian fields, green, golden, peaceful. The wicked suffered in Tartarus, alongside Titans and monsters. And the rest? They drifted, shades among shades. Cerberus guarded them all. But even the best guardians face challengers. Take Orpheus, the musician, whose lyre could make stones weep. When his beloved Eurydice died, he descended to the underworld to bring her back. He didn't fight Cerberus. He played for him. And the hound, overcome by the music's sorrow, laid down his heads, perhaps weeping, perhaps simply falling into a trance, and let Orpheus pass. Then there was Heracles, tasked with bringing Cerberus to the surface as his final labor, not to kill him, but to borrow him. Heracles wrestled the beast with bare hands, dragged him into the sunlight, where the hound blinked in dismay, and, once the task was done, returned him unharmed to his post. Even the strongest hero understood some boundaries must be respected. And Psyche, the mortal woman, on a quest through the underworld, she brought honey cakes, sweet bribes for a beast who, despite his duty, still enjoyed a treat. She tossed one to each head. Polite, thoughtful. Cerberus, it seems, appreciated good manners. So as you drift deeper now, remember, the guardians are not there to frighten you. They are there to protect the world of the living from the world of the dead, and the dead from being disturbed. And with that thought, let your mind grow still. The gate is closed. The hound is watchful. And you are safe. Sleep now. Of course. Here is your passage rewritten in a calm, natural, sleep-friendly storytelling tone, free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, or abrupt shifts, while preserving all the mythic beauty, depth, and gentle rhythm ideal for bedtime listening. These stories tell us something important about Cerberus. He is not truly defeated by force. He is overcome by gentleness, by cleverness, by compassion. A lullaby, a honey cake, a fair challenge. He is a creature of rules, not rage. And perhaps that's why he was so deeply respected. Even Hades, stern god of the underworld, held a kind of fondness for him. In many ancient depictions, Cerberus isn't chained or whipped. He's shown sitting peacefully at Hades' feet, like a loyal companion. Present, watchful, waiting. And here, let's take a quiet, sleepy detour into etymology. The name Cerberus may come from an ancient Indo-European word meaning spotted, which means, yes, if we're being wonderfully literal, Hades may have named his three-headed hellhound, Spot. That's right, Spot. Perhaps it was a joke from old linguists. Or perhaps it's a gentle reminder. Even the most terrifying beings can have ordinary names. There's also a connection between Cerberus and ancient burial customs. The Greeks often placed coins on the eyes or on the mouths of the dead. Payment for Charon, the ferryman who carried souls across the river Styx. But in some traditions, they also buried honey cakes. Not for Charon, but for Cerberus. A sweet offering to the guardian, a bribe to ease the soul's passage. It's easy to forget, amid the snarling imagery, that Cerberus was never cruel. He didn't torment souls. He didn't hunt the innocent. He simply ensured that everyone stayed where they belonged. The swamp fell silent. The labor was complete. Well, mostly, in one version. Heracles was denied credit because he'd accepted help from Iolaus, an unfair ruling, but the gods always loved fine print. Still, the tale endured. The Hydra became a symbol, not of brute force, but problems that multiply when met with blunt solutions. She reminds us that some challenges require patience, precision, and a helping hand. But what did she mean, truly? Partly. She was the spirit of the swamp itself, feared in the ancient world for its mystery, disease, and hidden dangers. Swamps swallowed people without a sound. The Hydra gave that terror a face. But she was also a reflection of life itself. Not all struggles end when struck. Some divide. Some return fiercer. The Greeks knew this well. Plague, war, betrayal. Saw one crisis, and two more wait in the wings. The Hydra was that truth made flesh. And yet, she was not unbeatable. Her story reminds us that even Heracles, the strongest of heroes, had to think, to innovate, to accept help. His greatest victories were never his alone. Gently tucked beneath the fangs and fire is a quiet lesson. Monsters often outnumber swords. Her legacy lives far beyond myth. Hydra-like problems haunt every age, complex, recurring, resistant to simple fixes. Yet we remember the torch, the cauterization, the cleverness. In ancient art, she coils across painted vases, heads twisting like braids in the wind. Heracles stands nearby, grim and sweating, club in one hand, torch in the other. The scene is frozen not at victory, but in the struggle. Perhaps that's the point. In Roman times, she grew more monstrous. In Christian allegory, she became a symbol of sin. In the Renaissance, she was recast as a seductive, feminine terror, part woman, part serpent, echoing older fears of the wild unknown. But strip away the centuries, and we return to the still waters of Lerna, to the mist, to the hiss. Imagine it now. You're standing at the edge of the marsh. Reeds part with a whisper. A ripple moves across the dark water. Then a head rises, long, narrow, fanged. Another follows, then another, until the night blooms with serpents. 100 eyes blink. 100 tongues taste the air. You step back, not in fear, but in awe. Because this isn't evil. This is ancient power. Chaos wrapped in elegance. A puzzle, not a curse. And far off, a torch flares in the dark. A hero steps forward, not to slay, but to understand. So rest now. The Hydra sleeps again in her swamp, coiled beneath lilies and mud. Her heads no longer hiss. Her breath no longer poisons. She dreams of fire and rain, of battles lost and won. And you are far from Lerna now, safe beneath your blankets, where no heads multiply and no blades are needed. The marsh is still, the torch is out, and the monster, like you, is at peace. Sleep deeply. Let the world remain quiet. Let the hush of evening settle around you like soft wool. The air is still. Nothing stirs, except memory and the faint echo of hooves on ancient stone. Above, the stars watch, distant, patient, as they always have. But below, in the smoldering hills of forgotten land, a creature once breathed fire into the wind. She was impossible, furious, proud. Her name was Chimera. Tonight, we wander slowly through the scorched hills of Lycia, what is now southwestern Turkey, but once a land of legend. In the crack between the rocks, where sulfur steamed from the earth, the Chimera waited. She was a monster built of contradictions. A lioness at the front, fierce and roaring, a goat rising awkwardly from her back, and a long, viperous serpent for a tail, coiled and hissing behind. And if that weren't enough, she breathed fire. Of course she did. Greek poets described her with a mix of horror and awe, a creature so unnatural. She must have been divine, or perhaps a mistake the gods forgot to recall. Like so many monsters, she was a child of Typhon and Echidna. Chaos not just in her nature, but in her very birthright. Her name, Chimera, means she-goat in Greek, which feels oddly specific for a creature who was also lion and serpent. But the Greeks often named things after their most confounding feature. And what could be more confounding than a goat erupting from a lion's spine? She haunted the people of Lycia, feared like wildfire, like divine punishment. But she had no grand agenda. She didn't demand sacrifices or pose riddles. She simply existed and scorched everything around her. Why here? Why Lycia? Because the land itself breathed fire. Even today, at a place called Yanardas, flaming rock, methane seeps from the earth and ignites into ghostly blue flames that burn endlessly. To the ancients, fire from nowhere had to have a cause. So they imagined Chimera breathing those flames, dwelling beneath the stones. Myth, after all, is how the Greeks gave shape to the impossible. The most famous tale to Chimera belongs to Bellerophon, a hero less known today than Heracles or Odysseus, but no less bold. Bellerophon arrived in Lycia under cloudy circumstances. Some say as a prince, others as a fugitive. The king, hoping to be rid of him without staining his own hands, gave him an impossible task. Asterisk, go slay the Chimera. Asterisk, a polite way to say, asterisk, may you never return. Asterisk, But Bellerophon didn't flinch. Instead, he sought a secret weapon, Pegasus, the winged horse. With prayer, perseverance, and a golden bridle from Athena, he tamed the sky-born steed. Now he could fly, out of reach of claws, fangs, and fire. Picture it, the chimera stalking the cracked earth, flames pouring from her lion's maw, the goat bleeding amidst the smoke, the serpent tail lashing. Above her, wings beat like thunder. A man circles on horseback, spear in hand, watching, waiting. He couldn't get too close. One blast of fire and it's over. He couldn't stay aloft forever. Exhaustion would claim him. So he devised a trick. He fixed a lump of lead to the tip of his spear. A strange choice, unless you understand heat. Swooping low, dodging flame, he drove the spear into her throat. The lead melted in her fiery breath, flowed down her windpipe, and smothered the fire from within. It wasn't strength that won the day. It was cleverness. A smith's trick, not a warrior's rage. The Greeks cherished that. Wit over muscle, strategy over force. In their world, heroes triumphed not because they were the strongest, but because they were the smartest. And so the chimera fell. The fires quieted. Bellerophon returned a hero, though, like many Greek heroes, his pride would later undo him. He tried to fly to Olympus, and Pegasus, wise beast that he was, threw him from the sky. But that's another story. As for the chimera, she was buried in the hills. The flames, some say, are still her breath, leaking through the cracks. Even today, the fires at Yanardus burn. Some call it gas. Others call it memory. In later ages, chimera came to mean any impossible fusion, a dream too strange to be real, a warning against excess, a metaphor for the unnatural. In medieval bestiaries, she grew new forms, leopard spots, dragon wings, human faces, always shifting, always reflecting our own chaotic imaginations, beautiful, terrifying, uncontainable. And in art, she appears forever locked in that moment before victory or disaster. The Greeks loved that tension, the breath between triumph and tragedy. But her deeper meaning? Monsters were never just monsters to the Greeks. They were mirrors. The chimera, three creatures in one, breathing fire, might represent uncontrolled imagination, dreams without boundaries, the danger things that are neither one thing nor another. Or perhaps she was simply fire given form, so people could understand the earth they walked on. That is the quiet genius of myth. It gives shape to confusion, a face to fear, a story where silence once reigned. So tonight, as you lie beneath your own roof, centuries from Lycia's hills, picture her, the lioness pacing through blackened stone, the goat's head bleeding flame, the serpent tail twitching in anticipation. She is not coming for you. She never was. She was born. She raged. She was defeated and remembered. That is all any monster asks. Now the hills are quiet. The fires dim. Pegasus flies on. Bellerophon is long gone. But the chimera remains, not as threat, not as curse, but as story. Sleep now. The wings have passed overhead. The flame is just a flicker. The beast is at rest. And so are you. Close your eyes now. Let the soft tide of silence lap gently at the edges of your thoughts. There is no hurry, no wait of waking hours. Just a rise and fall of your breath and the drifting stories of the old world. Tonight, we do not descend into the earth. We do not wander swamps or scorched hills. No, tonight we gaze into eyes. Not yours, not mine, but hers. And if we are not careful, we may never look away again. This is the story of the Gorgons, and of one in particular. You know her name, even if you can't recall where from. It lingers in the back of your mind like a warning from a dream. Medusa. Say it slowly, softly. The name is already an incantation. The Gorgons were three sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. And depending on which version of the myth you follow, they were either always monstrous or made monstrous. That's the thing about Greek myth. Nothing is simple. Everyone has a past, often a painful one. Let's begin with the older tales, the ones that came before sympathy had a voice. In these, the Gorgons were born monstrous, children of sea gods, creatures of dread from their first breath. They lived far to the west, beyond the edges of maps and reason. They had bronze wings, snakes for hair, scaly skin, teeth like fangs. And their eyes, asterisk, could turn you to stone, not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. One glance, and your body would freeze. Your breath would stop. Your soul would drift from flesh turned cold and gray. They were not hunted. They were the hunters. And no man returned from their lands intact. But then a softer version arose, a tragic one. In this telling, Medusa was not born a monster. She was a maiden, perhaps a priestess of Athena, goddess of wisdom and war. She was beautiful. So beautiful, the gods took notice. And one did more than notice. Of course. Here is your passage rewritten in a calm, natural, sleep-friendly storytelling tone, free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, or abrupt shifts, while preserving all the mythic depth, emotional nuance, and gentle rhythm ideal for bedtime listening. Poseidon, god of the sea, desired her, and according to the myth, he pursued her. In some tellings, he seduced her. In others, more honest, more painful, he assaulted her, and not in some quiet meadow, but in Athena's own temple, when the goddess returned and found her sanctuary defiled. She did not punish Poseidon. She punished Medusa, because in mythology, justice is not always just. And the gods, after all, behave like people, which is often the most dangerous thing about them. So Medusa was cursed. Her hair became snakes. Her face, once lovely, became something unlookable, not because it was grotesque, but because it was too powerful. She was given the gift, or the curse, of the petrifying gaze. No longer a priestess, no longer human, no longer desired. She fled west with her sisters, and from that moment on, she was both feared and hunted. Now consider this. A woman punished for being beautiful, then hunted for being dangerous. There's something ancient in that rhythm, and sadly, something eternal. But back to the myth. You may remember the name Perseus, a hero with a magic satchel, and a knack for quests no one was meant to survive, sent by a king who wanted him dead, but without saying so outright. "Bring me the head of Medusa," the king said, as if asking for a bouquet of flowers. And Perseus went not alone but with divine help. The gods, for reasons of their own, equipped him carefully. Athena gave him a polished shield, smooth as a mirror, so he could see without looking directly. Hermes offered a curved blade, sharp and swift. He received winged sandals to fly, and a magical satchel to carry the head once it was severed. You may notice a pattern in Greek heroics. Monsters are rarely defeated by brute strength alone. There are tools, rules, reverence. Because the Greeks understood, monsters are not just strong, they are symbols. They must be approached with cunning, not just courage. Perseus flew to the edge of the world, to the land where the Gorgons slept. They slept by day, you see. Even curses need rest. Their stone-turning eyes only worked when open. There, among the rocks, the sisters lay coiled in slumber. Perseus crept forward, not gazing directly, but watching through the reflection in his shield. It's a haunting image, isn't it? He cannot face her directly. He must see her through a mirror, indirect, safe, distant. One wonders how many truths in life must be seen the same way. With one clean stroke of his blade, he struck. Medusa's head fell, eyes still open, still dangerous. And from her blood sprang two beings. Pegasus, the winged horse, and Chrysaor, a warrior with a golden sword. Life emerging from death, a fusion of beauty and violence. Perseus placed the head in his satchel. Even severed, it remained a weapon. He would later use it to turn foes to stone, kings, monsters, threats, before finally returning to Athena. And Athena? She mounted Medusa's head on her shield, the Aegis, carrying it into battle for all time. Pause there. Athena, the one who cursed Medusa, who armed the man who killed her, now wears her face on her armor. Why? Some say it was guilt, a silent tribute to the woman she failed. Others say it was practicality. The Gorgon's gaze was, after all, powerfully effective, but perhaps it was something deeper. Perhaps Medusa had become more than a victim, more than a monster. She had become a symbol. In time, her image spread across the ancient world, not as a horror, but as a guardian. Her face, the Gorgonian, was carved onto shields, painted on doorways, etched into coins and breastplates, not to frighten the innocent, but to ward off evil. Scholars call this apotropaic, a fancy word for something that turns danger away, a reversal, from hunted protector, from cursed to sacred. Her face, tongue out, eyes wide, snakes writhing, became an ancient alarm system, a silent declaration. Asterisk, this space is protected. Do not cross. Asterisk, how's that for poetic justice? And so, across the centuries, Medusa was reclaimed. Artists painted her not with fangs and scales, but with sorrow. Her snakes became symbols, not of terror, but of transformation. In the Renaissance, poets softened her story. In the modern age, she became a feminist icon, a woman punished for her beauty, transformed against her will, then demonized for surviving. Is she still terrifying? Yes, but perhaps not for the reasons we once thought. And what of her sisters? Stheno and Euryale, the immortal Gorgons, often go unnamed in popular tales. They were never slain, never cursed anew. They remained wild-winged, grieving. Their names mean mighty and far-roaming. Perhaps they were even more fearsome than Medusa, yet less remembered. That, too, is a kind of curse, to outlive your sister and be forgotten, but somewhere in the margins of myth they still fly, not quite villains, not quite mourners, just shadows at the edge of the world. And here we find the heart of it. The Gorgons, Medusa in particular, are not monsters in the way we usually imagine. They are protectors, victims, warriors, goddesses. Her image, born of fear, became a shield, not to harm, but to defend. Think of it. A face so powerful it turns violence to stone, not with fists, not with fire, but simply by being seen. What is more dangerous than a woman who cannot be looked upon, and who, in turn, sees everything? Tonight, let us not fear her. Let us imagine her not as a beast with snake hair and bloodied stare, but as a figure walking the border between myth and memory, not chasing you, not hunting, just watching, guarding. Perhaps she stands outside your window now, not to petrify, but to keep watch, to hold back whatever else the night might bring. Sleep beneath her gaze. You are safe. The monsters she once faced are long gone, and she, Medusa, has become something else. No longer victim, no longer villain, but a quiet goddess of the threshold. And you, dear listener, are on the peaceful side of that line. Sleep now. Let the stone turn back to flesh. Let the hair become wind. And let her eyes, once wide with rage, gentle and close at last. Take a breath. Not too deep, just enough to feel your ribs rise like the tide beneath a quiet moon. Let your limbs grow still. Let your thoughts soften. Tonight we set sail, not toward peace, not yet, but between monsters. There's a place in the world where the sea narrows like a throat. Ships must slide carefully between high cliffs and deep water. To steer clear of danger on one side, you must come perilously close to disaster on the other. This place is real, the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily. The ancients knew it well, but they saw more than currents and rocks. They saw jaws. They heard voices. They gave names to the dangers that lurked there. On one side, Scylla. On the other, Charybdis. If you asked an ancient sailor which was worse, he might pause, shrug, and say, asterisk, depends on how you like to go. Asterisk, Scylla lived in the cliffs. She didn't move much, just enough to ruin your day. Perched in a cave high above the waves. She waited, and when a ship passed close, she struck. Fast, efficient, hungry. Homer tells us she had 6 long necks, each ending in a head with 3 rows of sharp teeth. 12 legs stretched from her waist like a monstrous spider. Her voice, like the yelp of puppies, pitiful, high-pitched. But her bite? That was something else entirely. She didn't sink ships. She didn't breathe fire. She simply plucked sailors from the deck, 1 for each head. 6 men gone before anyone could scream. Odysseus saw it happen. The sorceress Circe had warned him. Asterisk, steer close to Scylla. You'll lose a few men. It's horrible, but better than Charybdis. She'll take the whole ship. Asterisk. So he gripped the tiller, teeth clenched, and watched as Scylla struck. 6 men lifted, flailing, screaming. Then silence. It wasn't a battle. It was a toll, and she took it, as she always did. But who was Scylla before this? There are softer, sadder stories. She was once a girl, not divine, not monstrous, just a maiden who walked ashore and loved the sea. One day, she caught the eye of Glaucus, a sea god. He loved her. She did not love him back. In despair, Glaucus went to Circe, who did love him, and begged her to make him irresistible. But Circe, jealous and wounded, saw Scylla not as a rival, but as a threat. So she poisoned the spring where Scylla bathed. And the next time the girl stepped into the water, she changed. Her body stretched. Her legs twisted. Dogs burst from her skin. She screamed, and kept screaming, until she found herself trapped in the cliffs above the sea. No longer a girl. No longer anything at all. Just Scylla. She wasn't evil. She just became. On the other side of the strait, the water boils. That's where Charybdis waits. You don't see her until it's too late. She has no arms, no teeth, no eyes to meet. She is simply a whirlpool, a mouth in the sea that opens 3 times a day and drinks the ocean. If you're in the way, down you go. She was once a daughter of Poseidon, loyal, proud, a helper in floods and storms. But Zeus, who valued balance over chaos, struck her with lightning. He chained her to the seafloor and cursed her with eternal hunger. Now she swells and collapses, breathes in and spits out. Never full, never still. She is absence made visible. The kind of danger you only understand once you've been pulled in. So there you are, a sailor, a captain, a hero, passing through. To your left, cliffs, still as death, hiding something sharp. To your right, water that tugs sideways, silent, relentless. You must choose. Odysseus chose Scylla. Losing 6 is better than losing everyone. It's a cruel math, but Greek myth is full of it. Survival always costs something. Scylla and Charybdis were never just monsters. They were choices. Scylla is the pain you expect. Swift, sharp, specific. You brace for it. You live through it. Charybdis is the slow dread, the danger that pulls at your feet like regret, like gravity. She doesn't take a few. She takes everything. Together, they represent an ancient truth. Some journeys offer no safe path. Sometimes, to keep going, something must be sacrificed. And yet, Odysseus passed through, not untouched, not unscathed, but onward. That's the thing. Even in the face of monsters, loss, and waves that don't care if you pray, the Greeks believed you could keep moving. Even if it hurt, even if the way was narrow, even if you cried, you could still steer the ship. Later storytellers soften the tale. In some versions, Odysseus tries to fight Scylla, to stab her as she grabs his men. But the gods laugh at that. You cannot stab a choice. You cannot strike a fate. You can only face it, sail through, and remember. In art, Scylla is often shown as a woman above, beautiful, serene, and chaos below. Dogs, serpents, limbs braided into madness. A reflection of the sea itself. Calm on the surface, turmoil beneath. Charybdis is harder to paint. She's not a creature, but a phenomenon, a swirling disk, a gaping hole, a silence that swallows. But everyone understood her. Sailors did. Poets did. And so do we. We still say it. Asterisk between Scylla and Charybdis. Asterisk. A way to say, I had no good options. I chose what hurt less. I'm still here. And that matters. Because sometimes, victory isn't slaying the monster. It's knowing which one to face. Knowing when to hold the tiller and not let go. The ancient world was full of things the Greeks couldn't explain. Earthquakes, storms, loss. But instead of surrendering to fear, they gave those things stories. Not to tame them, but to understand. They named their monsters. And in doing so, they named their fears and their courage too. So tonight, as you lie in your bed, you are not at sea. You are not between rocks. There is no whirlpool at your feet, no jaws in the dark. You are safe. The strait is behind you. Scylla sleeps in her cave, curled around her sorrow. Charybdis turns slow and silent beneath a peaceful sea. And you? You are the sailor who passed through, not unchanged, but still sailing. Let the wind go quiet. Let the water calm. The monsters, just this once, are still. Sleep now and drift. You've already done the hardest part. It's quiet now. Let the hush of evening wrap around you like a cool linen sheet, the kind worn by kings and commoners alike in the Mediterranean dusk. Imagine a torch flickering in a far-off corridor. Footsteps echo on marble. A door opens and closes behind you. And now you are in the labyrinth. It doesn't matter how you got here, only that you have. And somewhere at the center of this winding puzzle of stone and shadow waits the monster. Tonight we meet the Minotaur, not just a beast in a maze, though that's how he's often remembered, but something far older, stranger, sadder. Let us begin at the beginning, which, as with most Greek myths, is neither simple nor clean nor family-friendly. It starts with King Minos of Crete. Minos wanted to rule not just men, but the sea itself. So he prayed to Poseidon, god of the oceans, asking for a sign that he was chosen. Poseidon answered, sending from the waves a magnificent white bull, powerful, radiant, divine. Minos was to sacrifice it as proof of his loyalty. But Minos, being human, made the usual mistake. He got attached. Surely the gods won't mind if I keep this one, he thought. Asterisk, I'll offer a lesser bull instead. Asterisk, but the gods did mind. Poseidon, especially. And so he punished Minos, not directly, but through his wife, Queen Pasiphae. He filled her heart with a strange, unnatural longing, not for a man, not even for a god, but for the very bull her husband had refused to sacrifice. What followed was tragedy wrapped in myth. Pasiphae, desperate, turned to Daedalus, the great inventor, and Daedalus, ever the artist, obeyed without judgment. He built her a wooden cow, hollow, lifelike, perfect. She climbed inside and deceived the bull. From that union came a child, a boy with the body of a man, and the head of a bull. The Minotaur, he was never given a true name. Minotaur simply means bull of Minos, as if he were property, a problem, a mistake. And in many ways, that's exactly what he became. The child could not live among people. He grew quickly, strong, wild, voiceless. Horrified and ashamed, Minos once again called on Daedalus. And this time, Daedalus built the labyrinth, a palace of corridors so complex that even its maker could barely escape, a place where left and right lost meaning, where you could walk forever and never see the same wall twice. At its center, they placed a Minotaur, to live, to wait, to be fed, and fed he was on strangers. For at that time, Crete ruled the seas, and Athens, young and defiant, had once rebelled and lost. As punishment, Minos demanded tribute. Every 9 years, 7 youths and 7 maidens from Athens would be sent to Crete. They were led into the labyrinth. No weapons, no guide, no hope. They entered and never returned. It was an execution. It was erasure. And so the Minotaur became more than a monster. He became the engine of fear, a living reminder of shame, of power, of silence. But then came Theseus, Prince of Athens, brash, clever, reckless, the very definition of a Greek hero, equal parts nobility and ego. When the next tribute was due, Theseus volunteered, not to die, but to kill. He sailed to Crete, and there he caught the eye of Ariadne, Minos' daughter, Pasiphae's child, half-sister to the Minotaur. Moved by his courage, or perhaps weary of the bloodshed, she gave him a gift, not a sword, not a map, but a thread, a spool of golden string. Tie it at the entrance, she whispered. Asterisk, follow it back if you survive. Asterisk, Theseus entered the labyrinth. He let the walls close in, let the silence press down. And at last, he found the creature. Imagine that moment. Hero and monster, face to face. And the Minotaur, Not roaring, not charging, just staring. Because here's what the stories often skip. He didn't ask to be born. He didn't choose a labyrinth. He was made, then caged, then fed strangers in the dark. Was he savage? Yes. Was he a monster? Perhaps. But also, perhaps not. Theseus fought him, killed him, left his body in the dark, and followed the thread back to the light. Victory. The end. But as with all Greek myths, the ending leaves questions. Who was the Minotaur really? Some say he was a cautionary tale, a warning against unnatural desire and pride. Others see him as something deeper, the unwanted child, the castaway, the one punished for the sins of his parents. He was never given a voice, never given a choice, just a maze and a hunger. And so, as you drift now between dreams and memory, know this, the labyrinth still exists, not in stone but in silence, not in Crete, but in the spaces we refuse to speak of. And the Minotaur, he waits, not to hunt you, but to remind you. Even monsters have mothers. Even monsters were once someone's child. Sleep now. The thread is tied. The center is empty. And you are already finding your way out. Of course. Here is your passage rewritten in a calm, natural, sleep-friendly storytelling tone, free of timestamps, robotic phrasing, or abrupt shifts, while preserving the full depth, emotional resonance, and gentle rhythm ideal for bedtime listening. The Minotaur may also have been the embodiment of shame buried at the heart of power. In historical terms, there may have been something more. Archaeologists studying the ruins of Knossos, the grand palace of ancient Crete, have uncovered vast, winding complexes, room after room, corridor after corridor with no straight lines, no clear paths. Some believe this was a labyrinth, not a trap but a court, not a prison, but a palace so intricate that visitors felt lost. And the bull? It mattered deeply in Minoan culture. Bull leaping was a sacred ritual. The animal was revered, not feared. Its horns appear on frescoes, altars, ceremonial vessels, symbols of strength, divinity, life. So perhaps the story of the Minotaur is not a literal truth, but Greek reinterpretation, even a misreading of a foreign custom. The Athenians, after all, loved a good story, especially one where the clever city of reason and democracy, triumphed over the strange islanders with their bulls and their mysteries. It is history retold by the victors dressed in myth. But whatever the truth, the story has endured. The image remains, a beast in a maze. And the maze, the maze is the most important part, because it's not just a building. It's a metaphor. The labyrinth is the mind, the past, the trap of guilt, the structure we build to contain what we don't want to face. And the Minotaur, he's what we place at the center. A fear, a memory, a mistake, something we'd rather forget. So we wall it in, but it never goes away. It waits. Walk far enough into yourself and you'll find it. And then, if you're very lucky, very brave, or very foolish, you'll find the thread and come out again. Theseus did. He left the labyrinth, but not without cost. He abandoned Ariadne on an island. Some say he was ungrateful. Others say Dionysus claimed her as his own. Either way, the result was betrayal. He sailed home, but forgot to change the ship's sails from black to white, as he'd promised his father. King Aegeus, watching from the cliffs of Athens, saw the dark sails and believed his son was dead. In grief, he threw himself into the sea, and so the sea was named the Aegean. Even victory, in Greek myth, comes with mourning. The Minotaur is dead. The labyrinth is empty. But somehow, the story still echoes. We still build mazes. We still lock things away. And deep inside, the part of us that first heard this tale as a child still walks those halls, wondering what waits around the next corner. So let's leave the torchlight behind. Let the corridors fall silent. The thread has been followed. The monster has been faced. You're no longer in the dark. You're no longer in a maze. You are back here, where it is warm, where it is still, where the Minotaur cannot find you, where the walls are no longer closing in, where sleep is waiting, gentle, slow, and safe. And whatever monster you face, it is not tonight. Let the labyrinth vanish. Let the hooves fall silent. Rest now. You've already walked far enough. It is night again, the kind of night where the wind hushes the trees into stillness, and the moon casts pale silver through your window like a watchful eye. You are still. All is quiet. But long ago in the world of myth, the wind was not always so gentle. There were times when it came shrieking across the sea, tearing sails from masts, snatching food from tables, stealing men from ship decks, or even from the sky itself. And if you were an ancient Greek and heard that wind howling through the cliffs, you wouldn't just call it a storm. You might whisper, harpies, or if your conscience was heavy, if you'd wronged the gods or spilled innocent blood, you might fear something worse. The Furies. Tonight, we drift into their stories, into winged warnings and shrieking skies, into judgment that flies, and punishment that never sleeps. We begin with the Harpies. Their name comes from the Greek harpazo, to snatch. And that's exactly what they do. Snatch, take, steal. They weren't always evil, just fierce, elemental. In the earliest myths, they were storm spirits, daughters of the sea god Thaumas and the Oceanid Electra. Their names? Alo Storm, Osa Pete, Swiftflyer, and sometimes Seleno, the Dark One. Lovely names, really. At first, they were simply winds given form, racing across the sky, screeching like omens. Sometimes they carried souls to the afterlife. Sometimes they stole objects from mortals' hands, on divine orders or whim. But as myths grew darker, so did they. They became women with the bodies of great birds, vast wings, talons sharper than knives, faces once beautiful, now twisted by rage and duty. Their scent was foul, rot, salt, smoke. Their voices screeched like rusted hinges. Their feathers tangled with the remnants of what they'd last taken. They didn't hunt because they were hungry. They hunted because someone had to, because the gods, in their infinite and often cruel wisdom, needed messengers who could make mortals miserable and fast. One of the most famous tales involves King Phineus of Thrace. He had the gift of prophecy, but made the mistake of revealing too much of the gods' secrets. As punishment, he wasn't blinded or killed, but starved. Each day, a feast was laid before him. Roasted meats, ripe fruits, warm bread. But the moment he reached for a bite, asterisk, asterisk, the harpies came asterisk, asterisk. They descended in a fury of wings and claws, snatching the food or fouling it with filth, so vile it couldn't even be touched. Phineus aged, grew gaunt, wept, not just from hunger, but from the cruelty of being so close to relief and forever denied. Eventually, help arrived, the Argonauts, on their quest for the Golden Fleece. Among them were Zets and Calais, the Boreads, winged sons of the North Wind. When the Harpies next attacked, the brothers gave chase. The sky filled with feathers, steel, and shrieks. The Harpies fled west, beaten, breathless, until Iris, messenger of the gods, intervened. She struck a bargain. Leave Phineus in peace, and your lives will be spared. They vanished to the farthest edges of the world. Some say near the Elysian fields, far from humans, but never truly gone. They lingered in myth, always hungry, always watching. Some said they stole children. Others believed they carried away the souls of the guilty. Still others saw them as bringers of plague, divine instruments of pestilence. Because the Harpies don't just represent theft. They represent torment, unrelenting, unjust torment. The shadow of cruelty that hangs over those already suffering. They take what cannot be taken again. But the Furies? They are not thieves. They are not mischief makers or shrieking winds. They are judges, punishment given wings, older than the gods, born not of love, but of blood. When Uranus was castrated by Cronus, his blood fell to the earth, and from that blood, Gaia, Mother Earth, gave birth to the Erinyes. Alecto, unceasing anger. Megaera, jealous rage. Tisiphone, avenger murder. They were not created. They emerged primeval forces. Not evil, not good, but necessary. Alecto punished moral crimes. Megaera, betrayal and envy. Tisiphone, murder, especially kinslaying, the worst of all. They did not come uninvited. But once summoned, they never stopped. The Furies are always female, but not in the gentle way mortals imagine femininity. They are motherhood without mercy, memory without forgiveness, the part of justice that does not weep, but endures. Their hair writhed with serpents, their breath burned. They carried torches, scourges, venomous snakes. Sometimes their robes bled. Sometimes their footsteps alone could drive a man mad. Their presence didn't just punish the body. It made the mind their hunting ground. They didn't just chase you. They made you chase yourself. No crime summoned them faster than the murder of a parent by a child. And so we come to Orestes, son of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra. Agamemnon, who sacrificed his daughter Iphigenia to win fair winds for Troy. Agamemnon, who returned home only to be murdered by his wife and her lover. Orestes was told, "Justice demands you avenge your father." So he killed his mother. And the moment her blood hit the floor, asterisk, asterisk, the Furies rose, asterisk, asterisk, screaming from the cracks in the earth, not with swords, but with questions. Asterisk, were you right? Asterisk, asterisk, does blood call for blood? Asterisk, he fled to Delphi, to Athens, but they followed him into temples, into dreams, into madness. The first trial in history was held, not by mortals, but by gods. Athena herself cast a deciding vote for mercy. Orestes was freed, but the Furies were not banished. Athena offered them a new role, not tormentors, but guardians of justice. She gave him a home beneath Athens, in the sacred grove of the Areopagus. There, they would hear the cries of the wronged, watch over odes, uphold balance. And they accepted. They became the Eumenides, the kindly ones, not a euphemism, a transformation. Because even vengeance can grow tired of blood. Even fury can find peace. They still appear in stories, in dreams, in guilt that won't fade. But now they are part of justice, not its enemy. In this, the Greeks revealed a profound truth. Justice is not only about punishment. It is about memory, asterisk, asterisk. The Furies remember. They remember what the world tries to forget. The silenced girl, the abandoned child, the unpunished murder, the lie that became law. And they wait, because time for them does not pass as it does for us. They do not age. They do not sleep. They watch. And when the world tilts too far from balance, they rise. In art, they are sometimes softened, older women, stern but wise. But in the oldest depictions, they are fire in the shape of women, nightmares made noble. And they never blink. The Harpies are hunger. The Furies are conscience. The Harpies are storm. The Furies are structure. Both fly. Both frighten. But the Harpies take what is yours. The Furies make you face what you've done. And that is perhaps more terrifying. Because monsters, as we often say, are not always outside the house. Sometimes they are inside. Sometimes they wear your name. Sometimes they sound like your own thoughts. But the Furies don't come to harm you. They come to remind, to weigh, to make sure you know, deep down just before sleep, that justice is not blind. It only waits. But tonight, there's no cause for fear. The Harpies have flown far from your windows. The Furies are not coming unless you've summoned them. And you haven't. You are still. You are safe. You are drifting. And they're only stories. Old, winged, and watching. But not for you. Not tonight. Let the feathers settle. Let the torches dim. Let sleep take you softly. The kindly ones are at rest. And so are you. The night is quiet now. The kind of quiet that lives in the space between thoughts. The kind that feels like a question waiting to be asked. And that's fitting, because tonight we meet the monster who waits with questions. Not with claws. Not with fire. But with a riddle and a smile, a stillness, a choice. This is the story of the Sphinx. Not the Egyptian Sphinx, the grand, silent guardian of sand and sun. No, the Greek Sphinx is something else entirely. Not a monument, but a challenge. Part lion, part woman, part bird, and all mystery. She sits outside the city of Thebes, on a rock just high enough to see the road, just low enough to be seen. Her wings are tucked in. Her gaze is unblinking. She does not chase. She does not move. She waits. And when someone passes, she speaks. One question. Answer correctly, and she lets you go. Answer wrongly, and she devours you. But let's begin not with her end, but her origin. Like so much in Greek myth, it is half divine, half uncertain. Some say she was born of Orthrus, the two-headed hound, and the Chimera. Others say she, too, was a child of Echidna and Typhon, the same parents who gave us Cerberus the Hydra and the Nemean lion. But while her siblings raged and burned and clawed, the Sphinx was given a quieter weapon, intellect. She was sent by the gods, by fate, by Hera's wrath over an old insult, or perhaps by Hades seeking balance to punish Thebes. And how? Not with fire, not with armies, but with a riddle. Asterisk, what walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening? Asterisk, no hints, no mercy. Those who failed to answer or answered wrongly were torn apart, not from malice, but because that was the price of failure. Thebes was paralyzed, trade halted, travelers vanished, fields lay untilled, the city's future held hostage, not by a dragon, not by war, but by a single sentence. That's what made the Sphinx terrifying. She didn't punish through strength. She punished through uncertainty. Her victims weren't the weak. They were the unprepared. To face her was to gamble with your understanding of the world, to risk not just your life, but your certainty. And then, one day a man arrived, Oedipus. His name now echoes through time for the tragedy of his fate. But on this day, he was just a traveler, weary, clever, already marked by prophecy. He'd left Corinth, believing he could outrun a curse. Asterisk, you will kill your father and marry your mother. Asterisk, in trying to escape it, he walked straight into it. But not yet. Now, he was only a man on the road to Thebes. And on that road, he met her. Her eyes locked onto his. He did not flinch. She asked a riddle, and he answered. Asterisk man. In childhood, he crawls on 4 legs. In adulthood, he walks on 2. In old age, he uses a cane 3 legs. Asterisk. The answer was simple. Obvious, even once you heard it. But no one else had seen it. No one else had looked at the riddle and seen not a trick, but a truth. That life itself is a riddle. That time shapes us. That we change, not just in form, but in need. Oedipus understood the riddle not as a puzzle, but as a pattern. And with that answer, asterisk, asterisk, the Sphinx was undone, asterisk, asterisk. She didn't curse. She didn't weep. She simply leapt from her rock and fell, her body shattered on the cliffs. Her wings snapped, her silence sealed. Why? Some say she was bound by magic. Her purpose ended once the riddle was solved. Others say she died of shame. But perhaps she chose to go, because a riddle once solved is no longer sacred. A mystery, once unraveled, cannot remain a monster, and she was never really a beast. She was a question, and now she was done. Thebes rejoiced. Oedipus was hailed as a hero. He married the queen and became king. But you know, or perhaps remember, this was no happy ending. The man he killed at the crossroads? His father. The queen he married? His mother. The riddle he solved was only the first. The harder one, the one about who he truly was, would take much longer to answer and cost him everything. But that is another story. Let's linger here with the Sphinx, because she is more than a monster. She is the moment before understanding, the stillness before speech, the test that cannot be passed by strength, only by reflection. The Sphinx is what waits when you stop running, when you're alone, when a question rises inside you that no one else can answer. She is not an enemy. She is a gate, and every one of us must pass her, sometimes once, sometimes again and again. In art, she appears regal, restrained. Lioness body curved in repose. Wings arched like they're about to lift into flight. Eyes distant, not cruel, not curious, just waiting. In the most famous ancient depiction, a 5th century BC vase shows her seated on a pillar, while Oedipus stands below, asterisk, asterisk, thinking asterisk, asterisk. No drama, no violence, just a question, and a man trying to find the shape of its answer. The Greeks didn't draw her with fire or gore. They didn't need to, because the Sphinx is terrifying not for what she does, but for what she requires. She requires you to know yourself, and there's no weapon for that, only thought. Even now, she waits. In our stories, in classrooms, at crossroads, in quiet moments before dawn. She lives wherever a question is asked that might change you, and she doesn't threaten. She challenges. There's something oddly comforting in that. All the monsters we've met so far, they lash, they howl, they hunger. The Sphinx? She only asks. And sometimes what she offers, that moment of understanding, is worth the risk. Because knowledge, like all sacred things, must be earned. And what we learn in silence often stays with us longer than what we learn in fire. So if you ever find yourself standing before her, not in myth, but in a moment, don't panic. Breathe. Think. The answer may not come right away. It may feel impossible, but it is there, and she will wait. Not kindly, perhaps, but patiently, because that is what the Sphinx does. She waits for us to grow into our answers. And now she is gone. Her cliff is empty, her wings folded for good. And you, dear listener, you're past. You walked the road, faced the riddle, spoke the words. Now you may rest. Close your eyes. The question has been asked, the answer given. The monster has stepped aside, and the gates have opened. Of course. Here is a continuation of your mythic journey. ***3. 000 words *** of rich, immersive storytelling in the same calm, lyrical, sleep-friendly tone. This passage flows directly from Sphinx's cliff, deepening the mythic world, while leaving the story beautifully open-ended, as you requested. The gates have opened, but what lies beyond is not peace. Not yet, because in the world of myth, every answer births a new question. Every gate leads to another threshold, and the road, once walked, never truly ends. It only winds deeper into the hills, into the stars, into the hush between heartbeats. As you step past the Sphinx's empty perch, the air changes. It grows cooler, quieter, as though the very wind is holding its breath. The path ahead is no longer stone but dust, soft, ancient, silvered by moonlight. And in the distance, where the land meets the sea, a single figure waits. She is neither young nor old. Her hair is woven with laurel and sea glass. Her robes shift like tide-worn silk, sometimes blue, sometimes gray, sometimes a deep violet of twilight over water. You know her, though you've never seen her face. This is Métis, wisdom herself, hidden not in a temple, but in the space between choices. And she is not alone. At her feet coils a serpent, not a kid and his child, not Typhon's spawn, but something older. Its scales shimmer like obsidian, but when it moves, you see not darkness, but stars beneath its skin. This is Ophion, the serpent who once ruled the heavens before Cronus cast him down. He is memory given form. He is the first law, forgotten but not gone. Métis smiles, not with triumph, but with recognition. You solved the riddle, she says, her voice like water over smooth stone. Asterisk. But did you understand it? Asterisk. Before you can answer, the ground trembles, not with violence, but with recognition. Far below, in the deep roots of the earth, something stirs. Not Typhon, not the Titans, but Themis, the Titaness of divine order, mother of the fates, sister to Métis, daughter of Gaia. She rises slowly, not as a giant, but as a presence, like the first light of dawn spilling over a mountain. Her eyes hold no judgment, only balance. In one hand, she carries a pair of scales. In the other, a spindle, empty, waiting. The riddle was not about man, Themis says. Asterisk, it was about time. 4 legs, instinct. 2 legs, reason. 3 legs, memory. You walk not just forward, but in spirals. And every spiral brings you back to the center. Asterisk, she gestures at the horizon, where the sea meets the sky in a line so fine seems stitched by a god's needle. Asterisk, beyond that line lies Thule, the island of mist, the place where time slows and stories breathe. There, the gods do not rule. The monsters do not hunt. There, the past and future mingle like wine and water. And there, you will meet the one who was never named. Asterisk. You ask, who? But Métis only touches your forehead gently, and in that touch, a vision blooms. A child standing on a shore, holding a shell to her ear. The shell does not echo the sea, but voices. Voices of those who came before. Voices of those yet to be born. And in the center of the shell, a single silent note. Asterisk, asterisk, the sound of the world before names, asterisk, asterisk. She is the keeper of unspoken things. Métis whispers. Asterisk, the one who tend the garden where all stories begin and end. Asterisk, you feel the pull of that island now. A longing not of the body, but of the soul. But the path to Thule is not walked with feet. It is sailed. And so the three goddesses lead you to the shore, where the waves lap like lullabies. There, half buried in the sand, lies a ship, not of wood and sail, but of bones and starlight. This is the Argo Novice, not Jason's vessel, but its older, truer self. The ship that carries souls between worlds, between ages, between what is known and what must be dreamed. Its hull is made of the ribs of the first whale. Its mast, the spine of a fallen Titan. Its sails, woven from the dreams of poets who died before they could speak their final verse. Métis guide you aboard. Themis casts the mooring line free. And Ophion, the star-scaled serpent, curls around the prow like a guardian. As the ship drifts from shore, you look back, and the world you knew begins to soften, like ink dissolving in water. The cliffs of Thebes blur. The Sphinx's rock vanishes. Even the stars above seem to shift, rearranging themselves into constellations you've never seen. The weaver, the unasked question, the breath before the first word. The sea grows calm, unnaturally so. No wind, no current, just stillness and the soft pulse of the ship's own breath. Then from the depths a voice not spoken, but felt in your bones. Asterisk, who sails without a name? Asterisk, you turn, and there, standing on the surface of the water, is a woman. She is barefoot. Her dress is made of fog and river reeds. In her hands, she holds a lantern, but instead of flame, it glows with moonlight caught in spider silk. This is Hecate, Titan-born, honored by Zeus, neither Olympian nor monster, but something in between. She is a goddess of crossroads, of magic, of the spaces where worlds touch. You have passed the Sphinx, she says. Asterisk, but the greatest riddles are not spoken, they are lived. Asterisk, she steps onto the ship, her feet leaving no mark on the bone-white deck. I will guide you to Thule, she says. Asterisk, but know this, the island is not fixed. It moves. It hides. It reveals itself only to those who carry no destination in their heart. Only wonder. Asterisk, you ask, what will I find there? Hecate smiles, a sad, knowing smile. Asterisk, you will find what you forgot you were seeking. Asterisk, the ship sails on. Days pass, or perhaps hours, or years. Time here is not measured in suns or moons, but in questions. Each time you wonder, asterisk, why am I here? What comes next? Is this real? Asterisk, the ship glides forward, as though your curiosity is the wind in its sails. At night, Hecate lights her lantern, and the sea beneath you glows with bioluminescence. Not the cold blue of earthly plankton, but warm gold, like liquid starlight. And in that light you see them, the lost ones. Not ghosts, not shades, but unfinished stories. A boy who never learned to speak. A queen who abdicated before her coronation. A poet who drowned before writing her first line. They drift just beneath the surface, their hands almost touching the hull, their eyes full of quiet longing. They are not dead, Hecate explains. Asterisk, they are paused, waiting for someone to remember them, to give their story a shape. Asterisk, you reach down and for a moment, your fingers brush the water. The boy looks up and smiles. Then the ship moves on. One evening, as the sky deepens to indigo, you see it, a faint shimmer on the horizon. Not land, not light, but breathing. Thule, the island rises from the sea like a dream waking itself. Its shores are black sand that sings when walked upon. Its trees have leaves of silver and bark of polished stone. And at its center, a garden, not of flowers, but of silence. This is the Bibliotheca Aetna. Hecate says, the library of unfinished tales, not a place of answers, but of questions waiting to be asked. You step onto the island. The ground beneath your feet is not solid, but yielding, like walking on a deep breath. The air smells of ink, old paper, salt, and something sweet like crushed violets and rain. A path forms before you, lined with open books that glow softly. Their pages are not filled with text, but with images that shift as you pass. A child drawing a door on a wall, a sailor mending a torn sail with thread made of moonlight, a grandmother whispering a story into a seashell. You follow the path. At the base of the central tower, a figure waits. She is neither young nor old. Her hair is white as bone, but her eyes are the green of new leaves. She wears a robe woven from the first words ever spoken. Asterisk, let there be, asterisk. And in her hands, she cradles a book bound in dragonfly wings. This is Cleo, not merely the muse of history, but the keeper of unwritten stories. You carry the first sound, she says, her voice like pages turning in an empty hall. Then you have come for the second silence. You ask, what is the second silence? She does not answer with words. Instead, she opens the dragonfly wing book. Inside there is no text, only a mirror, but it does not reflect your face. It reflects a room you've never seen, a dimly lit study, shelves overflowing with scrolls, a window open to a stormy night. At the desk sits a writer, you, but older, staring at a blank page. Their hand hovers over the parchment, trembling. They do not write. They wait. For every story told, Cleo says, 1,000 go untold, not from lack of courage, but from lack of a listener. The second silence is the space between the story and the ear that hears it. It is the breath before the first word, the pause after the last. She closes the book. You have broken the first silence with your listening. Now you must learn to hold the second, not as emptiness, but as possibility. She leads you into the tower. Inside, the air thrums with the weight of unwritten things. Shelves stretch into infinity, filled not with books, but with potential. Some glow brightly. Others are dark, waiting. In one corner, a shelf holds stories that begin with once, I almost. In another, tales that end with, but I never said. Cleo stops before a blank shelf. This is yours, she says. You reach out and the shelf responds. From the wood rises a book, its cover smooth and warm, unmarked. As your fingers brush its spine, words begin to form, not in ink, but in light. The one who listened. You open it. The pages are not empty. They are filled with scenes from your journey. You standing before the Sphinx. You on the bone ship beneath starlight. You in the weaver's forest, your thread joining the great tapestry. But the final pages are blank. Because it is not finished, Cleo says, no true story ever is. She places a feather in your hand, not from any bird you know, but from the story birds of the forest. When you return to your world, you will not write with ink. You will write with listening. Every time you truly hear another, you add a line. Every time you hold space for silence, you turn a page. You look up. Will I remember this place? She touches your temple, not with your mind, with your stillness. The library lives not in memory, but in the pause, the moment between question and answer, between sound and silence. Then she steps back, and the tower begins to fade, not vanishing, but retreating into the mist of dreams. Hecate waits at the shore, the bone ship bobbing gently on the starlit waves. As you board, you look back. The island of books is already dissolving, its towers sinking into the sea like memories returning to sleep. But the book, asterisk the one who listened asterisk, remains in your hands, warm and humming softly. The ship sails on. The night deepens. And then you hear it. Not a song, not a voice. A knock. 3 soft taps, like someone rapping gently on a door. You look to Hecate. She is still listening. The knocks come again from the hull of the ship. Hecate kneels and presses her palm to the bone-white deck. Her eyes widen slightly. "It's him," she says. She reaches into the hollow of the ship's prow and pulls out a box. Not wood, not metal, but something older, a chest carved from the heartwood of the lignum fabuli, inlaid with silver runes that shift when you look at them. "It was left here," Hecate says, her voice hushed with reverence, "by Daedalus." You take the box. It is light, but heavy with meaning. The lid is not locked, but sealed with wax imprinted with single symbol, a labyrinth with no center. As your fingers brush the wax, it melts, not from heat, but from recognition. Inside the box lies a single object, a key, not of iron or gold, but of breath and starlight, shaped like a question mark. It hums faintly, in harmony with the shell. What does it unlock, you ask? Hecate's eyes are distant. Not a door, a threshold. Daedalus did not build mazes to trap. He built them to reveal. This key opens the space between what you know and what you are ready to understand. She takes the box and places it beneath the mast. Keep the key close. It will guide you when the path is not clear. The ship sails into a bank of mist, thick, silver, smelling of rain and old stone. When it clears, the sea has changed. No longer starlit, but mirror black, reflecting the sky so perfectly that up and down blur. The stars are not above you, but around you on all sides, as though you float in the center of the cosmos. And in the distance, a shape, not an island, not a ship, a house. It stands on the water as though on solid ground, small, weathered, with a thatched roof and a chimney from which no smoke rises. A lantern glows in the window, warm, yellow, inviting. Hecate's breath catches. "The Domus Umbrarum," she whispers, "the house of shadows. Not a place of fear, but of facing." You step onto the water. It holds you. The path to the house is lined with stones, each carved with a single word, asterisk forgotten, unspoken, unmourned, unasked, asterisk. At the door you hesitate. Hecate places a hand on your shoulder. "This is yours to walk alone." You nod. The door opens at your touch. Inside, the air is still. The house is small, one room, with a hearth cold, a table bare, a single chair facing the fire. On the walls hang mirrors, not glass but polished obsidian. You approach the nearest. It does not show your reflection. It shows a memory you buried, a promise you broke, a kindness you withheld, a truth you left unspoken. Not to shame you, but to witness. You move to the next mirror. Another memory. The time you walked away when you should have stayed. The words you swallowed when you should have spoken. Each mirror is a door to a part of yourself you turned away from. At the center of the room stands a figure. Not a monster. Not a god. Yourself. Not as you are, but as you might have been had you not turned away from those moments. This other you is not angry. Not sad. Just waiting. You don't have to carry them alone, they say. Their voice is yours, but softer, kinder. You step forward, and as you do, the mirrors begin to melt, not into glass, but into water. The memories flow across the floor, not as regrets, but as understanding. The other you takes your hand. The shadows are not enemies. They are parts of you that waited in the dark for you to come home. You stay in the house for a long time, not speaking. Not weeping, just being. When you finally step outside, the house is gone. Only the stones remain, their words now glowing softly. Asterisk remembered. Spoken. Mourned. Asterisk. Hecate waits by the ship. You face them, she says. It is not a question. You nod. The key in your pocket hums, warm against your skin. The ship sails on. The sea returns to starlight. And far ahead, where the horizon curves into mystery, you see it. A faint glow, not of fire, not of stars, but of dawn. But not the dawn of day. The dawn of something new. Hecate smiles. You are nearing the edge of the map. Beyond that light, even I do not know. You hold the shell in one hand, the key in the other. The book rests in the hollow of your arm, its blank pages humming with potential. The ship sails toward the glow. And as you draw closer, you hear it, not in your ears, but in your bones. A voice, soft, curious. calling your name, not as you are, but as you are becoming. The light grows brighter, not blinding, welcoming, and in its warmth you feel it, the pull of the next threshold, the whisper of the next story, the quiet promise that the journey is far from over, for beyond the edge of the map, beyond the house of shadows, beyond even the library of unfinished tales, there waits a new beginning, and you, with the shell in your hand, the key in your pocket, the book in your arms, and the song in your bones, are ready to meet it. Asterisk, the ship sails into the dawn, the stars fade behind you, and somewhere in the new light, a door begins to open, not to end the story, but to invite you deeper. Asterisk,